for yourself it's not an option.
These are our stories on Cutting Edge Channel 404.
The firefighters continue to battle flames on several trucks torched by protesters at the Mooi River Plaza in KZN. Week 3 and still no end in sight to the nationwide bus strike. The members of the Seven Angels Church suspected of taking part in global police massacre are to appear in court.
And later in sport, Barcelona are delighted that they finally wrapped up a 25th La Liga title with 4 matches to spare after Lionel Messi hat-trick secured a thrilling 4-2 victory at Deportivo La Coruna.
Very good morning to you and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Shante Yankees. Coming up this hour here in South Africa, live updates on the latest regarding the violent protests in KZN's Mooi River Plaza where over 20 goods trucks were torched. Vena Kirtley is also standing by with your sports this Monday morning. A very good morning to you. Looking absolutely lovely today, Vena.
Thank you very much, Shante. You're looking lovely yourself. Good morning to you. Happy Monday. And what a great way to start off the week after a weekend where we saw Mamelodi Sundowns wrap up the Absa Premiership title. We'll be bringing you a full look at what's happening in your sporting world, both here on the African continent and abroad. That's coming your way on Newsroom at 1:45, the top of every hour. First though, let's go back to Shante for your top story.
The top story at 9 o'clock, some of the trucks that have been torched by protesters on the N3 in KZN last night are still ablaze. The road between the Mooi River Toll Plaza, both south and northbound, remains closed to traffic. Emergency services are still in the scene with the firefighters battling to extinguish the blaze. Well, cleanup operations are underway with various tow trucks taking away what remains of the over 20 trucks that were burnt. Meanwhile, police in KwaZulu-Natal have arrested over 50 people in connection with the protests last night. Police say various units remain deployed in the area. A group of 55 people arrested will appear in a local court facing charges of public violence. For the latest on the situation in Mooi River, we are now joined by SABC's Sibonga Mbata. Very good morning to you, Sibonga. Essentially, what is the latest regarding the protests in Mooi River?
A very good morning, Shante. As you can see behind me, some of the trucks, the firefighters have managed to put out the flame because 2 hours ago when we arrived here, quite a number of trucks were still quite burning. They were still in flames, and there was a large contingent of firefighters set on site to be able to put out the blaze, and it seems like they have managed to put out the blaze in most of the trucks that were burning when we arrived this morning. Earlier on, we spoke to the MEC for Transport, Community Safety and Liaison in the province, Mr. Mxolisi Kaunda. He had just came from the police station where 54 people were apprehended, because we will recall that chaos ensued last evening when the trucks were looted and then started to be burned. As we speak, almost 20 of them had been burnt so far, but 32, including 14 others that were looted and not necessarily burned. So all in all, 32 trucks were actually stopped here on the N3 as of yesterday evening until this morning. And we do understand that the drivers as well seek refuge because they were saved by the police from the burning and the chaos, and then they were kept at the police station. So when the MEC was there this morning, he did mention that he did manage to speak to them and try to understand and find out what seems to be the problem. And of course, it seems like it's the very same problem that we had encountered, because 2 weeks ago, an incident of similar nature had happened right in the same spot during the Easter weekend, where 8 trucks were looted and also burnt beyond recognition. It is quite a concern, like the MEC had highlighted earlier on, that it's a concern because this is a route that connects many provinces in the country. So it's a hard knock on the country's economy because most of these trucks were actually transporting goods to various companies in the province as well as other provinces around KZN. But at the moment, the trucks are being put out on flame and they're going to be towed so that the road can be opened for free flow of traffic. But we will keep track of the situation as the story progresses and possibly be able to speak to some of the drivers themselves, because last time when we spoke to the driver, he had mentioned that he was just saved just in time by the police when angry community members who were looting the truck he was transporting liquor on, they were threatening to attack him because they were calling him a foreign national, which seems to be the common dispute. It's a labor dispute because most of the truck drivers are complaining that most companies are preferring to employ foreign nationals over them, and it's a hard knock on them because then now it limits their employment opportunities. And of course, the very same area where all of this is happening is somewhat a poverty-stricken area, because we will recall that it had a few firms before, but then they had to be shut down. So there's very minimal employment opportunities in the very area, which alludes to the looting that happens whenever incidents of this nature always happen around here.
Konga, can you give us more details then about who is suspected to be around the protest? You mentioned there the issues of labour and also bringing into context that foreign drivers are being used in some of the trucks. Are they then the people that are behind the protest that in fact took place last night?
Though we cannot guarantee in terms of who actually started the protest and the blocking and burning of the trucks yesterday evening, but gathering from what we have been told thus far, it is alleged that it might be the South African drivers supported by the community, but the community would not be necessarily protesting on what is alleged to be the dispute. The community just came in just to loot, because most of these trucks, they are well aware that they are carrying a large number of goods, different goods, from your food to your alcohol to your exercise books to different companies. So the community members possibly just might see opportunity to come and grab a few goods, but at this point it is alleged that it might be the South African drivers, because they are actually in dispute of the alleged foreign nationals who are being hired by these companies and which are chucking them out.
I'm seeing that the road behind you is closed both north and southbound. Essentially, how is the N2 being affected this morning? Also noting that it is a long weekend.
From the evening yesterday, commuters were alerted to avoid using the N3 and try and use alternative routes, those coming up from Harrismith all the way to Johannesburg, and those coming from the Eastern Cape, south of KwaZulu-Natal, going up. So I can say from the moment we came this morning, there wasn't quite a lot of traffic when you look behind the wreckage of the trucks. So I gather that commuters did listen and did opt for alternative routes. But of course, it would be in the best interest of those coming later on in the day for the wreckage to be taken out so that there can be free flow of traffic on this road, both north and southbound.
In terms of the security contingent in the situation, why have police not managed to prevent the burning of the trucks? You mentioned earlier on in the beginning of the crossing that this in fact is not the first time that such an event has taken place, over the past month.
I did pose that particular question to the MEC earlier on, that just 2 weeks ago during the Easter weekend, an incident of similar nature has happened, and what has been happening throughout this time to make sure that we curb such incidents. There has been meetings between the police making sure that they are visible in this area to make sure that there's calm and then there's safety, not just for drivers but for the looters as well, because luckily enough, no one has been injured or has passed away from both these incidences, the one from Easter weekend and this one. But it is a concern. The MEC has highlighted that they are currently in talks with labor unions of drivers as well as with police structures to make sure that
Sibonga Konke Mbasa giving us an update with regards to those violent protests taking place at Mooi River down in the KZN area, giving us updates there. As we also saw behind us still those small billows of smoke as firefighters throughout the course of the night tried to put out those trucks, also confirming 32 trucks had also been affected from the violent protests. We will be giving you more updates on that story. Well, moving on, thousands of commuters across the country remain frustrated with the never-ending bus drivers' strike. Talks between employers and unions broke down again last week, but bus drivers have been given an ultimatum to accept the revised 8% offer by Wednesday. The drivers are feeling the pinch of the work stoppage deep in their pockets. This is as Mangabo Nkunu reports.
It's been 3 weeks since Jacob Mokone last reported for duty. Work on his house has come to a standstill. The 49-year-old father of 4 says he can't afford to pay his builders for renovations.
We
are struggling to pay our debts because when we get paid, debit orders literally withdraw almost everything. And with the little that remains, we can't feed our families because the money is not enough.
Mukone is among 16,000 bus drivers who down tools, demanding a 12% increase. The no work, no pay policy is now hitting home.
It's hard for us as a family. It's no longer nice because the money that my husband was paid before was better. I'm not working, and it's really difficult for me and the children.
Mukone says whilst they feel for stranded commuters, they believe their cause is a just one.
The bus driver's family, the passenger's family, we are in equal suffering, we are in equal problems. So now we are saying enough is enough.
Mukone has called on government to increase its subsidy for buses. He and his colleagues are adamant they won't go behind the wheel until their demands are met. Mangaba Mchunu, SABC News, Muloto in Mpumalanga Province.
Now, for an update on the story, we are joined by SATAO spokesperson Zanele Sabela. Very good morning to you, Zanele. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. You have been given an ultimatum to accept that 8% offer as the union. What are your comments and your views on that ultimatum?
Good morning. Thanks for having us. So today the unions will be meeting to decide on a way forward. It is actually quite unhelpful of employers to be giving us an ultimatum at this very critical stage of negotiations. As you know, they deadlocked again last Thursday after the Minister of Transport and the Minister of Labour had come in to speak to us, urging us to come to a resolution. And now they come up with this ultimatum. And the problem with this ultimatum is because the offer currently on the table is the 9%, but then this 9% only covers an increase for 11 months, not the 12 months that workers are entitled for. And then for the second year, it's the 8%. There are also issues that are still outstanding on the table, which are the dual driver issue, the night shift issue, and the insourcing of workers like cleaners into the bargaining council. And so we haven't made any headway in terms of that. So this is why we are still finding ourselves in a stalemate.
We do know that there have been, a number of interventions, including that by the Department of Transport last week. But why is there still such an impasse?
Because the employers simply refuse to come to the table. They have recently released a statement saying that we have, over the last while, received over-inflation increases. But then what they do not say is that the wages in the sector are really quite low and that the workers actually don't have any benefits. We don't have medical aid, there's no pension fund or provident fund to speak of. And so these people, for a driver, a minimum wage is 6,900, and that is quite hard to make ends meet, considering also the long hours that they work.
We've also heard reports that some employers are now actually threatening to fire workers. Can you confirm this?
Well, firing workers won't be helpful because, for one, you couldn't possibly fire all 17,000 workers ergo. No, we're not going to stand for that. The government is not going to stand for that. An ordinary working person is not going to stand for that. So that's not really helpful. And these people are unionized. So if you fire a worker on a protected industry strike, you will have us to deal with once again.
Now, surely, you know, some of the workers are starting to feel the pinch slowly but surely, specifically financially. Are there any plans going forward to offer any financial assistance to, you know, those 17,000 plus workers that have not been working now for the past 3 weeks?
Unfortunately, it's a no work, no pay strike policy that's on. And workers know that. And we've just had Mr. Mogoni was just interviewed that he says that they will hold on until they get what they want.
Now, in terms of the strike and the impasse, the ongoing impasse that's been going on, you know, commuters are very frustrated, specifically with the lack of communication. Is there an end to the strike? Is there any communication that will be given to commuters as to when one can expect the strike to come to an end?
Okay, so in terms of when the strike is going to end, I couldn't possibly preempt that. So like I said, we'll be going into this meeting today to decide on our next move. But as much as we could say, I don't know, when you say lack of communication, this has been all over the media. Everywhere, your TV, the print and the radio. So in terms of communication, what commuters are looking for, perhaps they're looking for communication from the bus companies, which I must say I understand because they're not very communicative. Even with us inside the negotiations, they tend to shuffle paper at us and they speak to us through mediators. So if they're looking for, I'm not sure what kind of communication commuters are looking for, but, you know, our hearts go out that they are the ones who are receiving the short end of the stick. But then so are the bus drivers and other drivers and other workers in the sector. And unfortunately, we do have to hold on for what we are fighting for.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning via phone lines. It's our spokesperson Zanele Sabele giving us an update on that bus strike, saying that at the moment there seems to be no end in strike. Also with employers now giving that 8% ultimatum that Sundowns says at the moment they are not willing to accept. We will be giving you more updates on that. Well, the Minister of Transport Bladen Zamande and MEC for Transport and Safety in the Eastern Cape, Weziwe Tikana, will lead various road safety activation programs in the Nelson Mandela Bay today. The activations form part of the long weekend period which covers Freedom Day as well as tomorrow's International Workers' Day celebrations. For the latest, we are joined live by Jade Leopold. So very good morning to you, Jade. Essentially, when do you expect the Minister of Transport, Dr. Nzimande, to arrive, and what is the main objective of today's meet?
Good morning, Shante, and good morning to the viewers. We have been coming to you live since early this morning, 6 o'clock from Nelson Mandela Bay, from Addo Road in Motherwell, which is seen to be one of the most congested streets in Nelson Mandela Bay, but also with the high accident zones. We know that it's a high accident zone with several cars being in collisions, and as well as pedestrians crossing the road and not. But it's quite true, the Minister of Transport, Bladen Zamande, will be joining the traffic department here in Nelson Mandela Bay on their roadblocks. It has been ongoing since early this morning and will throughout the day. They will be going to various suburbs in the metro blocks, but also speaking to commuters and like adhere to the rules of the road. We also know that it's long weekend. There's a lot of commuters traveling to and fro from KZN all the way to Cape Town. So they're also going to be stopping commuters, finding out have they taken a break, because relatively most of those accidents occur when drivers don't stop for breaks. But with now, I do have the provincial Mr. Mawethu, and he's going to be telling us how the roadblocks have been doing, as well as the readiness of the Metro with regard to the KwaZulu marches that will take place for the May Day rallies in Nelson Mandela Bay. Good morning, Mr. Mkli. Commander, just tell us, with regards to the roadblocks, we saw traffic officials full out this morning, ensuring that commuters adhere to the roads, but how has it been?
Thank you very much, Jade. We are actually doing well. We started from the 23rd of April to put up teams throughout the province. We actually assembled teams as well to ensure that they actually root out the issue of drinking and driving. We have already netted 102 drivers for drinking and driving throughout the Nelson Mandela metropolitan.
Okay, with regards to May Day tomorrow, how ready is the police as well as traffic law enforcement with regards to ensuring that marches take place peacefully, but also what roads will be closed, if any? Can you just tell us about that?
Thank you, Jay. Trust me, we are actually ready. We have actually ensured that there's high visibility. We'll be actually putting up roadblocks as well throughout the province. We have teams in the area of Umtata covering the N2, the N6. All the critical routes are actually covered with our traffic law enforcement as well as other law enforcement agencies. We have actually integrated our plans to ensure that at least we reduce or minimize accidents during this period.
Commander, just talking about that N6, we know that Queenstown, Lobodi, Umtata, Qunu, those areas are relatively the places that usually have the highest, traffic. What will be happening with regards to tomorrow? Any roads are safe.
Thank you, Jade. We have actually ensured that we have got speed chains. We're actually monitoring the drinking and driving. We're also monitoring all the other moving violations to ensure that clean the area and it's a joint law enforcement operation, and at times we'll find random operations without even expecting them.
And then lastly, Commander, what can commuters do with regards to, when they're traveling? What should they be doing to ensure that they don't meet up with accidents, but also ensure that they take breaks and so forth? What can they do? From the traffic official side, what advice can you give those traveling far distances?
Thank you, Jade. We're actually encouraging drivers to stop after every 2 hours, get a rest, and don't actually speed. And the passengers as well, not to encourage drivers to speed. By doing that, we'll ensure that at the same time, our people are actually monitoring everything that is happening throughout the province.
Thank you, Commander. That was Commander and Chief of the Provincial Traffic Department, Mr. Mawetu Mkli, saying and actually asking commuters and pedestrians alike to adhere to the rules of the roads, but also saying that they are ready for the May Day rally that will take place in Nelson Mandela Bay tomorrow. As we know that the Minister of Transport, Bladen Zamande, will be joining the traffic law enforcement in Nelson Mandela Bay with those several roadblocks that will take place throughout the day. It's back to you, Dante.
Thank you very much. That was Jade Lee Pulser from Port Elizabeth giving us updates there with regards to the road safety activation and campaigns in the Eastern Cape. Well, the Eastern Cape Arts and Culture Ministry has sent condolences to the families of the victims of the weekend crash that claimed the lives of actors Akumzi Jezile, Tobani Mseleni, as well as singer Siyasanga Kobese. The trio and 2 other victims died on the N6 road between Queenstown and Jamestown on Saturday. Our reporter Atule Joka caught up with Jezile's family and found the report.
Family members say Akumzi was traveling on the road to Komani when a trailer carrying a vehicle got disjointed from the car it was pulling, veering off the road and ultimately hitting on an oncoming vehicle. Akumzi was on his way back to bury his late grandmother. His grieving family says he was responsible from a young age. He says his death really shocked them, especially since he had just finished building a house for his mother and buying a car for her. He says he really loved his siblings and was everything to the family.
Akumzi was like a brother, a friend to me. So it's something that was really said to me. Up until now, it's something that I won't accept it, not anytime soon.
The family says they will meet to discuss funeral arrangements. Police are investigating a case of culpable homicide.
Newsroom police are investigating a case of culpable homicide where 5 people were involved in an accident on N6 at around about 2 o'clock in the morning.
Actor Tobani Mseleni and former jazz celebration singer Siyasanga Kobese were amongst the 5 who lost their lives. I am Atule Joka, SABC News, Esenqumeni, outside Ngcobo.
Well, South Africa and India are holding their first business summit. The 2-day event themed United by Legacy, Unified for Prosperity is aimed at maximizing the potential of economic and commercial partnership between the two countries. Now, for more, we cross to our reporter on the ground, Hasina Gore. Very good morning to you, Hasina. What is the main purpose of the summit?
Hi, good morning, Shante. We're back at the Sandton Convention Centre. This is the second day of the first India-South Africa India Business Summit. And the aim, of course, is to strengthen and grow trade relations between the two countries. Now, Shante, both South Africa and India have a rich history together. And the way forward is to grow our ties, both on the economic front and our relations, our friendly relations. Now, the program has just started. As you'll see behind me, there are dignitaries, VIPs, business leaders, SADC leaders, Minister Rob Davies and his Indian counterpart, Minister Pravin Gordhan, Minister Lindiwe Sisulu is here as well, Minister Lindiwe Zulu. And to tell us a little bit more about the official program today, I'm joined by the Consul General of India, Dr. KJ Srinivase. Dr. Srinivase, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit more about the official program today.
Good morning to all of you. It's indeed a pleasure to be with SABC. This morning's program is the main event of this summit. It's the plenary session which is started just now. As you know, this summit has the tagline, United by Legacy, Unified for Prosperity. India and South Africa have a rich shared history, which we now plan to leverage for progressing in the future. You know, economic relations are the most important part of any country's bilateral relations, and India and South Africa are natural partners. We have $10 billion of trade currently, which we plan to double in the next few years. At the same time, Indian companies in South Africa number about 150. At the same time, they are employing about 18,000 South Africans. Invested over 55 billion rand in South Africa. South African companies in India are still very less in number, but we expect that with their expertise, they will be coming up sooner rather than later.
There's going to be a memorandum of understanding signed between Invest South Africa and Invest India. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
This memorandum of understanding between the two principal investment agencies of the two countries is going to be a very important milestone, because these agencies facilitate and promote investment into their respective countries. We are now going to build a unified mechanism to improve this investment, remove the obstacles, and try to promote policies which will help both the countries. So this MOU will be the beginning of a new era, I must say.
One of the highlights is also the release of a white paper. Can you give us a little bit more information on what's contained in this?
This white paper is being jointly generated by the Confederation of Indian Industries and the well-known auditing firm PwC. They have joined hands to give the footprint of Indian companies in South Africa, those companies which concentrating mainly on their CSR activities, their corporate social responsibilities as we call, how they have contributed to this rich country, maybe providing education, technology, training internees, providing skills. And we are happy that this white paper will be released and people will know more about where, what, when Indian companies have done. And with that, this will be a sort of a blueprint in the future, like a golden thread, as we say, which we can follow to improve investment climate in both the countries.
Now, throughout the day, there are various sessions, and the sessions are being held on areas where there is potential for growth and cooperation between the two countries. What are some of the areas that we can expect discussions to be held in this, during the course of today, once the official program has been done with?
Sure. We are going to have a plenary panel session called Building Synergies Between the Two Countries. After that, we have parallel sessions on startups, automobiles, healthcare, mining, you have women entrepreneurs, you have fourth industrial revolution, and food processing. As I'm mentioning, all these areas are potential areas of growth between the two countries. For example, South Africa has tremendous experience in infrastructure building. We have AXA from South Africa building the airport for us in Mumbai. Then we have other companies like those in mining, in food processing, who can actually invest in India. They are a lot of opportunities in India. At the same time, India can help in education and the skills sector. We can help in the healthcare and pharma sector. We can help in entrepreneurship and startups. That's where our strength lies. And I think this is a golden opportunity for both these friends to get together and improve business. And at the same time, we both share the same types of challenges and opportunities. And this summit, we believe that we can bring both the countries together, investors together, policymakers together, get something to do common good for the people of both the country.
Now, in the field of agriculture especially, India has some innovative methods which South Africa can benefit. What do you think some of these methods that you have tried and tested, can they be used here?
Yes, one thing comes to my mind immediately is training in maths and science. That's where our companies, our education institutions have always concentrated, our government has always laid stress on this. That is something which we can help South Africa with. We can get teachers to help train the trainers, as we call it. We can help them to contribute to the society here. We also have a separate ministry in the last 4 years called the Skills Development Ministry, which these skills can be improved among various sectors for South Africans. And one of the important plans for this year from India is to establish a Skills Development Institute in South Africa, fully funded by India, so that we can contribute to the prosperity of South Africa.
Dr. Srinivasa, finally, before we hand over our viewers to the live event here, one of your key business people is on stage currently. Can you give us some background on the company?
Mr. Anil Agarwal is the chairman of the big conglomerate, we call it Vedanta Resources. He's still an Indian citizen, I believe, and he has interests across all the continents. But he is one of the biggest Indian investors in African continent. In fact, one of his projects in South Africa is already worth 1 billion in Northern Cape. And he is one of those philanthropic entrepreneurs. He has pledged 75% of his whole wealth to causes, for social causes like women's health, children's education. So this is one company which has taken corporate social responsibility to a new level.
Would the white paper that we've just discussed be something that his company is involved in?
They are not involved in the publishing of that newspaper or white paper at all, but we have incorporated some snippets of various companies like the Tatas, the Wipros, the Mahindras and Nihilent, and also Vedanta, what they have done for the society of South Africa. And we believe that this partnership is there to stay.
Why do you think that social responsibilities from Indian companies play a huge role in the relationship, in the economic relationship between South Africa and India?
You know, corporate social responsibility is a way of giving back to the society. Yes. And that's where the companies will earn the goodwill. And at the same time, it develops that intimate relationship, people-to-people contact with the local communities. And I believe that this will help in the future, say, negotiating projects, at the same time helping the local communities, because at the end of the day, business is for development of the countries. It's not just enriching a single person. So Indian companies are ethical, like the Tatas, the Mahindras, wherever you go. Their name is there in the ethical group of companies. They have never done any hanky-panky. So I think these will be a role model for others. So I believe that this CSR white paper will actually help us to highlight all their important contributions to the community.
Thank you so much. And Shante, we're going to take you live into the session now. In a short while, ministers will take to the podium. A memorandum of understanding will be signed. And back to you. Goodbye.
And Anglo-American remain pride of South Africa. We have discussed in Anglo and said, look, there are billions of acres of land for the exploration. Can we use some of the land for the agriculture? And they have agreed. So this will be another. I'm very pleased that Mr. Prabhu here, who's taking forward and taking, he's so busy, taking the time to come here and to meet South Africa, India together. So thank you very much.
Coming out of that summit there, Hasina Kathrada just taking us through today's program as well as the main objectives of that collaboration. Some other news, 12 suspects believed to be linked to the Ngobo police massacre are expected to appear in the Ngobo Magistrates Court. The suspects are reported to be members of the Mangoba Seven Angels Church in Nyanga village. The church is at the center of a deadly attack on a police station in February. The church was used as a hideout. Suspects said to have been involved in the Ngobo police massacre were later killed in a shootout with police after hiding in the church. Britain's Interior Minister resigns following critique of the UK government's alleged ill treatment of Caribbean residents. Kenya bans a film about a love story between two women, saying it promotes lesbianism. A Gibson Kente musical banned under apartheid back in local theatres. Leading at the half hour with some African news, the Kenyan authorities have banned a film that tells the love story of two women on the grounds that it promotes lesbianism. However, activists say the ban will only promote the interest in the movie. The filmmaker, whose feature production Rafiki is set to debut at the Cannes Film Festival next month, has talked about the ban slapped on the film and why love stories matter in Africa. Well, Rafiki, which means a friend in Swahili, is a love story of two women and is the first ever Kenyan film to premiere at the prestigious festival in France. The Kenya Film Classification Board announced the ban on Friday and tweeted that anyone found in possession of the film will be in breach of law. The ban represents a reversal by the board, whose head praised the film earlier this month on a radio show, saying it was about the realities of our time and the challenges that our kids are facing, especially with sexuality. Well, the film is adapted from an award-winning short story, Jambula Tree, by Ugandan writer Monica Akda Nyeko. In 2015, the board banned the film 50 Shades of Grey. In Burkina Faso, designer is facing the challenge of starting up a business in a fledgling industry head-on. Burkina Faso produces more than 700,000 tons of raw cotton a year, but only 5% are processed locally. However, a local designer is determined to change all of this. 226 Kara is a ready-to-wear fashion brand that is set to revolutionize Burkina Faso fashion by using locally sourced products. A fashion event on a street in Burkina Faso's capital is a platform for up-and-coming designers to introduce themselves to the public. With the themed colors of Africa, the event is an opportunity for designers to be seen and to take part in a fashion event for the first time. Rahiza started out at the age of 23, learning to sketch as an apprentice to her mentor, one of Burkina Faso's most popular stylists. And then she started her own label, 226 Kara or 226 Kara, and now makes men and women's ready-to-wear and custom-made outfits using a combination of African prints and Faso Danfani, Burkina Faso's national cloth. Rahiza customers say they are drawn to her unique style of mixing traditional and modern designs. In international news, Britain's Interior Minister Amber Rudd has resigned after Prime Minister Theresa May's government faced critique for its treatment of some long-term Caribbean residents who were wrongly labelled illegal immigrants. For 2 weeks, British ministers have been struggling to explain why some descendants of the so-called Windrush generation, who were invited to Britain to plug labour shortfalls between 1948 and 1971, had been labelled as illegal immigrants. The Windrush scandal overshadowed the Commonwealth Summit in London and has raised questions about Theresa May's 6-year stint as Interior Minister before she became Prime Minister in the wake of the 2016 Brexit referendum. Well, Rudd had faced repeated calls from the opposition Labour Party to resign after she gave contradictory statements about meeting targets for deportations. And finally, a Gibson Kente musical tribute is set to wow audiences at the Durban Playhouse next month. The play, How Long, has been revived by well-known director Duma Ndlovu after 45 years. It was banned during the Apartheid-era. Mlungisi Kumalo reports.
This was said to have unnerved the apartheid government. It told the story of a grandmother brutally killed by police. Fearing it would have caused a possible uprising, How Long was eventually banned. 45 years later, the play, written by Brad Gibson, often referred to as the father of Township Theatre, returns to the stage. His close friend and director Duma Ndlovu says it's taken 12 years to bring the project to life.
Just before he died in 2004, he came to me, we sat down, he said, Xhego, I would like to leave all my works under your care to do with them whatever you can. I'm proud today that we are standing here at the Playhouse with the first play of the reimagined works of Gibson Kente about to be launched, and I'm very excited.
Popular South African entertainer Somizi Mhlongo has choreographed the play.
They asked me to choreograph. I was really honored because that's when I was conceived in the musical. And yes, that's when I was conceived in the musical, and it's amazing that I was born there and I grew up listening to this music.
Kente wrote several plays that reflected the struggles of black people in the 1960s. He produced his first play, Manana the Jazz Prophet, in 1963. His other famous pieces include Mama and The Load and Too Late. In 1976, he was jailed shortly after the filming of How Long. It was last performed in the country in 1973.
We saw a little bit of the performances and it's going to be fantastic. Absolutely loaded with energy. As one lady said, it's going to be fireworks.
What I've seen here has taken me back to those days when one was a teenager.
Kente died in the year 2003 after publicly announcing that he was HIV positive. How Long opens at the Durban Playhouse on the 5th of May. Mungisi Kumalom, SABC News, Durban.
Let's bring you some sports news now. We start with international football, where Barcelona have wrapped up a 25th La Liga crown. Meanwhile, in the English Premier League, Marion Fellaini's injury time header gave Manchester United a 2-1 win against Arsenal at Old Trafford. Paul Pogba had given United the lead from close range, but former United midfielder Henrik Mkhitaryan levelled after the break. Substitute Fellaini popped up in the 91st minute with a well-directed header to give Jose Mourinho the points over rival Arsene Wenger, who hasn't won a league game at Old Trafford since 2006.
Lifted in by Young towards Fellaini!
In Spain, Lionel Messi scored a hat-trick as Barcelona clinched a 25th La Liga title after winning 4-2 at Deportivo La Coruña. Barca made a perfect start when a record signing Philippe Coutinho scored with a stylish chipped shot. Messi doubled their lead in the 38th minute. Deportivo pulled one back through Lucas Perez, and Turkish midfielder Amre Kolak equalised in the 68th minute. It was top scorer and talisman Messi who restored Barcelona's lead. Messi claimed his 32nd league goal of the season with the help of another pass from Luis Suarez to round off the victory and give Barca a 7th La Liga title in 10 years, completing a 4th domestic double in that same period after beating Sevilla 5-0 in the Kings Cup final last week.
Does it again. Champions of La Liga 2017-18.
Let's take a look at the results from the English Premier League. United have now sealed their place in the Champions League next season, and they move closer to their target of finishing at least second best to champions Manchester City by opening a 5-point gap on Liverpool. Manchester City, meanwhile, equalled the Premier League record for the most wins in a season as the champions powered to a 4-1 victory at West Ham yesterday. Pep Guardiola's side now have 30 wins this term, matching the record set by Chelsea last season. Moving on to football from South Africa, Jomo Cosmos have qualified for the promotion relegation playoffs after a hard-fought win over a stubborn Super Eagles team. The 3-2 win in the penultimate round of the National First Division saw them move to second place. They're 2 points ahead of Black Leopards and 4 beyond the other two playoff contenders, Real Kings and Witbank Spurs.
An opportunity then.
Third-placed Jomo Cosmos knew that if they slipped against the Royal Eagles, they could lose sight of Black Leopards. The spotlight fell on the chasing pack, Black Leopards and Jomo Cosmos. Both teams are fighting for a place in the promotion relegation playoffs. And when centre-back Bongani Mbuli scored a header, Ezenkosi's hopes looked dashed.
Fine header.
However, Clifford Mulenga equalized from the penalty spot after the Eagles were penalized for a handball. Cosmos increased the tally to 3-1 following a defensive blunder in the 66th minute.
In for the goal that takes them in front. Well, it's turned out to be a come from behind from Jomo Cosmos.
The Eagles reduced the deficit to 3-2. However, it was too little too late as Ezenkosi were determined to finish second. However, with Highlands Park already having won the National First Division title, the last match of the league will be the decider on who will qualify for the playoffs. Tambashiba, SABC News.
So with one round to go in not only the National First Division but also the ABSA Premiership, the champions in both of the leagues have been confirmed. Mamelodi Sundowns over the past weekend secured a record 8th ABSA Premiership title with a 3-1 win over Ajax Cape Town. With the win and the defeat for contenders Orlando Pirates at the hands of Cape Town City, the championship was confirmed. SuperSport United's single point from the Chipper game means that they remain in a dangerous position as they have an inferior goal difference to the 15th placed Ajax Cape Town. But there are only 2 points separating the two. It'll all come down to the last fixture. But for Ajax, who next play Chiefs, perhaps they are under the most pressure. Platinum Stars' fate has already been confirmed. They go through to the National First Division, but it's 15th spot, which means you play in the promotion relegation playoffs against second and third from the National First Division, which the ABSA Premiership teams are hoping to avoid. And condolences have been pouring in for former Bafana Bafana player Beka Phakathi. He was killed in a car crash yesterday. The accident happened on the R33 in Greytown in the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands. It's believed a burst tyre was the cause of the crash. 2 other people were seriously injured.
Phakathi made his PSL debut for Golden Arrows in 2002. During his soccer career, he also played for Orlando Pirates and Maritzburg United. At the time of his death, he was a head coach of ABC Motsepe League team Umvoti FC in Greytown. The team had just won a provincial title and was set to play in the national playoffs of NFD.
The team as a whole, players and the whole management will be able to dedicate the playoffs to our coach and say to him we still believe that the guys will do whatever he always tells them to do and make sure that we win the promotion to NFD.
The football fraternity has reacted. They say his death has robbed the country of a national asset.
I think it's a loss for the football setup in South Africa, considering that Ubega was a young coach who was just coming up and we were just about to see his progress in terms of the achievement.
He leaves behind his mother, wife and 4 children. Vusi Kumalo, SABC News, Lamontville, Durban.
Moving on to rugby now, Springbok Sevens coach Neil Powell is focusing on the positives after a costly weekend in Singapore. After losing inspirational captain Kyle Brown for the remainder of the season with knee ligament injuries, the team ended in 4th spot and they also lost their World Series lead to eventual tournament winners, Fiji.
The Blitzboks played England in the bronze medal match. It was a roller coaster encounter and South Africa took an early 10-0 lead.
The 18-year-old tries. Haas. Africa. Winds up big style for the looping pass.
England then took a 19-10 lead at half-time.
Gets it away for Hayter. Charlie Hayter. Tiny line. Gets it down as well.
In the second half, the Blitzboks scored 2 tries to take back the lead.
Lovely line here from Hans, and the feet aren't too bad either. Hans is in for South Africa.
But England had the last laugh and won 26-24.
Norton keeps it alive for Hillary. We're going to be all square in a tick.
The final was another spectacular game in Singapore. Fiji won 28-22, scoring the winning try in the dying seconds of the game.
Far side, and Nanduva's bursting through. He needs support.
Fiji have 145 points on the overall log, while the Blitzboks are second on 141. 2 tournaments, England and France, are left in the season. Harry Olivier, SABC News.
Yeah, I must say happy, because we've asked the players coming into this tournament for energy, implementation of the processes, and smiles on their faces. And I think they did exactly that. I think they really played well. There was a great effort from the guys.
Moving on to motorsport now, Mercedes' Lewis Hamilton claimed his first victory of the season at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix amid some high drama on the Baku City circuit. Collisions and punctures were the order of the day in the 4th race of the season, with Hamilton, Kimi Raikkonen and Sergio Perez making up an unlikely podium. Hamilton, who also takes over the World Championship lead from Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel.
It was business as usual after the safety car was deployed, with the focus shifting back onto the contest between Vettel and Hamilton, with Vettel dominating proceedings. There was drama again on lap 40 as Daniel Ricciardo smashed into the back of his teammate Max Verstappen. Verstappen selfishly moved twice, not allowing Ricciardo any room to pass, ending the race for both Red Bulls. The most comedic of crashes in this race, however, belonged to Romain Grosjean, who inexplicably crashed into the barrier behind the safety car. If Formula One fans thought it couldn't get any scrappier in Azerbaijan, shockingly it did. With 5 laps to go, pole setter Vettel went in too hard on turn 1 and was overtaken by the Mercedes of Valtteri Bottas, with Vettel dropping to 4th place. And in another bizarre turn of events, Bottas picked up a puncture from the leftover debris soon after, gifting the lead to his teammate Hamilton. And the Briton made the most of his chance, hanging on for the victory with Raikkonen in 2nd place and Sergio Perez completing the podium. It was Hamilton's first victory of the season, his first win in 6 starts, and the 63rd of his career. Samantha Mari, SABC News.
And finally, in tennis news, world #1 Rafael Nadal of Spain outplayed Stefanos Tsitsipas of Greece, beating him 6-2 and 6-1 to claim his 11th Barcelona Open title. Tsitsipas, who at 19 years old was the first Greek man to make an ATP final since Nicholas Kalogeropoulos in Des Moines back in 1973, was no match for Nadal, as the Spaniard extended his winning streak on the surface to 46 consecutive sets. The victory reinforced his status as the overwhelming favourite to lift the French Open for an 11th time in June. Nadal now has 77 titles overall, while his career clay court match record stands at 401 wins against just 35 defeats. On the WTA, Karolina Pliskova won her first title of the year with a 7-6, 6-4 victory over American Coco Vandeweghe in the final of the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix. The dominant Czech 5th seed fired 11 aces and wrapped up the match in an hour and 56 minutes to halt Vandeweghe's fine run in the clay court tournament at Stuttgart. Victory in Germany gave world #6 Pliskova a 10th career title and her first since winning the trophy in Eastbourne last year. And your weather is up next with Phil.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let's take a look at what's going on in terms of the weather for today. Let's first of all take a look at our rainfall around southern Africa. As you can see, there are some stormy systems developing around South Africa's eastern coastline, just off that eastern coastline. As we move through the day, we're going to see some showers and thunder showers developing through that central interior of South Africa, as well as the eastern interior, so isolated showers are forecast there. And other than that, we're going to see some rainfall along the coastlines of Mozambique into parts of the interior around the northern areas of Zimbabwe and Botswana as well. So let's take a look in a little bit more detail what this all means for your weather today. Cape Town peaking at a maximum of 24 degrees, depending on where you are around the Cape Peninsula. You're going to see temperatures ranging from 19 to 24 degrees, so a little bit of a mild to warm one there. But remember this, we're going to see completely sunny skies in Cape Town for today. It's going to feel even hotter than that. Which is going to be a good change after the last few days of cold fronts passing by. Now, temperatures in Maputo are peaking at 27 degrees Celsius. We are expecting showers and thunder showers here. Harare peaks at 24 with showers as well, and Windhoek 25 with a partly cloudy day with a fair amount of sunshine. Now we move further north, where we're going to see the rainfall developing primarily through that interior and through the eastern coastline as well. Take a look at Mombasa and Dar es Salaam for today. We're going to see those showers really intensifying, starting to move into those areas. Kampala, Kigali, expecting some rather strong storm systems developing through that area and moving from the east to the west. And then, of course, as we take a look at our weather for today, this is going to reflect that Kigali seeing a 23-degree high with showers and thunder showers approaching the area. Thunder showers around Libreville, Kinshasa, Mombasa, Nairobi, Mogadishu. A lot of rainfall through this area for today. And as we see the change of season, we're going to see that becoming more and more common. Now, taking a look a little bit further north, what is going to become less common is the rainfall on that northern coastline. You can see today we're expecting a almost completely clear day through that entire area. A little bit of rainfall forecast along that northern coastline, but really it's not going to affect your day much at all unless you are directly in that very, very small area. Temperature-wise, it's still very hot in this part of Africa. 44 degrees in Agadez, 41 in Al Fajr, and 43 in Khartoum. Now, if you're going to be in this area over the next few months, you're going to see those temperatures climbing. We're moving through spring in the northern hemisphere, don't forget, and that's going to bring in some very, very hot conditions over the next few months. Now, today's rainfall in West Africa is concentrated on the southern coastlines there. Take a look at Lagos and Abidjan, both expecting showers and thunder showers. Conakry also getting involved in that rainfall there, and we're going to see those showers opening up into tomorrow as well. Now, this is where we'll leave your weather for now. Back to the news desk.
Well, South Africa and India holding their first business summit. Let's cross live as Praveen Gordhan, Minister of Enterprises, takes the podium.
Premier Gauteng, High Commissioner, our colleagues from SACU and SADC, and members of the business community represented here today. I'm just a supporting act. Our Indian colleagues represent Bollywood. I'm just a supporting actor to my colleague, Minister Davies. But as Mr. Massacre correctly reminded us, we meet in the embrace, if you like, of Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela. An embrace which tells us about the kind of values and actions that they stood for. And the question, of course, that the current generation is faced with is how do we represent those values and actions in today's very complex 21st century? It's nice to proclaim the heritage that we both have as Indian citizens and South African citizens. The real challenge for us, whether in business or in government, is how to play out that heritage in today's terms. The kind of humanity and human rights that they fought for, the freedom for each of our countries that they both represented and sacrificed so much for, and the kind of community of nations that they believed in and throughout their lives represented, whether it was in the trading sector, in the cultural sector, in the spiritual sector, or just in respect of global peace and relations as well. Today, South Africa and India share many common platforms. The BRICS formation, which meets later this year in South Africa in the form of its summit, where all the leaders of the BRICS countries will be represented once again at the summit. The G20, which is another arena in which India and South Africa have cooperated And our two ministers, Prabhu and Davies, represent us in the World Trade Organization and have developed a lot of common ground in respect of the kind of issues that they are confronted with. But over and above the transactional level in which all of us will be concerned about for the next 24 to 48 hours, in other words, what deal can I make with whom, if I can put it in simple terms. We need to just raise the bar a little bit as India and South Africa as well, particularly if we proclaim to be the children of Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela. Because we've got to ask ourselves, what will inclusive growth mean for our small 55 million population, but India's 1.3 billion population, and indeed probably 6 billion people who stand marginalized in most economies and countries of the world. Inequality remains a challenge both in the Western world or the developed world and in our own country. Business confidence has certainly been increasing in recent times, with the IMF saying that growth is pursuing a greater path. India's numbers, Mr. Prabhu, if one of the things you could export to us is your GDP numbers, then we would at least, numbers-wise, look a little bit better. But in South Africa, as we know, ladies and gentlemen, as President Ramaphosa has declared, we do indeed have a new dawn. And I'll come back to that. But that new dawn has created an immense new spirit in the country and confidence in the business community, which I hope will be reflected in the talks that we have going on today. It's also increased the level of public trust, which in many countries of the world is declining between business and government elites on the one hand and citizens on the other hand. And as the elite here, both political and business, we have to not only, as I said, transact on that which we have to, but also raise the bar and ask ourselves, what is it that we can do to increase the public's confidence in ourselves? And that confidence will only be increased, as Amartya Sen says, not by fancy models and formulae, but by the actual experience people have of the difference that growth and investment actually makes in their lives. So if people without water get water, if people without shelter get shelter, if young people without hope and jobs get more hope and jobs, then we are beginning to make a difference in the lives of people and earn their confidence as well. And in that sense, we share the quest for more jobs for all of our citizens, for a new set of skills, as Mr. Massacre and others were pointing out, to the newer generations of young people that are growing up in society, because clearly yesterday's skills are not good enough for tomorrow. And how we prepare our young people for tomorrow is probably the greatest challenge that our generation has. How do we also contribute to sustainable growth in the broader sense of the word and meet the sustainable development goals that the world has set for itself is a crucial challenge as well. One of the conversations that is happening at a global level, including in quarters such as the World Bank and the IMF, is how do we ensure that the benefits that accrue from these GDP and other numbers that we often refer to are benefits that are also accruing to what we would call ordinary citizens in our society. And that's one of the big challenges that globalization in its current form presents for all of us. So yes, it's done a fantastic amount to increase trade, to spread technology. I don't tweet, I'm sure many of you do, and enable us to communicate with that. But one of the morning newspapers today warns us about tweets as well. A study done by MIT shows that 75% of the information contained in these tweets is false. So welcome to the era of fake news as well. But we live in the real time, and this is not fake news. This conference is actually happening. The High Commissioner, when she approached me, said that India and South Africa need to open a new chapter in our lives. And as President Ramaphosa said, that this new dawn must mean that citizens benefit, as I said, from what government does and what the private sector does. But more importantly, the institutions of government and in particular in this instance, in my instance and the instance of my colleagues, state-owned enterprises need to move in a very different direction from the past era of what we call state capture in South Africa. And so as we look at the opportunities and you look at what kind of enterprises you combine your efforts in, let's also remind ourselves that the current global situation itself poses a number of risks that we as BRICS-related countries have the possibility of both mitigating on the one hand and contributing to developing a new direction on the other hand. The risks are that we might yet have another financial crisis, although we think we've just recovered from the 2008, 2009 crisis. The risk is that trade as we know it in the multilateral era through the work done at the WTO might not be the kind of trade that we would see in 2 or 3 years' time, given the kind of tweets that emerge from different parts of the world. You're not laughing at that one. And similarly, whilst technology is playing an important part, serious questions are being raised about big data and artificial intelligence and the fourth industrial revolution, and whether as countries and as people we are ready and able to cope with the kind of changes that they would actually demand. So with respect, I would suggest that business leaders today not only need to look at the transactional level, which I'm sure many of us will do today, but also begin to throw up the new Mandelas and the new Mahatma Gandhis in the 21st century, who will say to us that there's a new way in which economies can grow in a more sustainable and inclusive way. We found new ways in which to decrease inequality and poverty in our countries. And as we do so, let's reinforce the multilateral nature of the global relations that we've actually had, ensure that more trade happens, including the localization that Mr. Agarwal was speaking of earlier on, and ensure that the gap between rich and poor is in fact narrowed as well. So the opportunities exist for us, I see the CEO of SAA here, to once again establish the Joburg Mumbai or Joburg Delhi I'm not sure who stands accused of giving it up in the first place, but we'll discover that sooner or later. Secondly, there's a lot of room for us to learn from one another in respect of better governance, but more importantly, more effective business models as far as state-owned enterprises are concerned. And Mr. Prabhu here represents a person who turned the Indian Railways around, so perhaps he can share that experience with us and teach us a thing or two as well. And as has been pointed out, technology, IT, skills training, over and above the normal commerce and imports and exports are all areas that we could capitalize on. And finally, let me congratulate Mr. Agarwal on making Mr. Ramaphosa's 100 billion target now 99 billion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister Gordon. And of course, the SAA CEO, Mr. Buyani Jahana, I hope you're up for the challenge in a still challenging environment for you. But I am told we are welcomed, or we are graced with the presence of the Ministers of Trade from Botswana. They are here. I would like to just formally welcome them. Thank you. And we also have the Honourable Minister of Trade and Industry of Lesotho, Mr. Defo Mapesela. The Minister of Small Business Development of Lesotho, Mr. Chalanela Pori. The Minister of Investment of Trade and Industry of Botswana, as we have just heard, and Minister of Trade and Industry of Mozambique. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking trade, so it's only prudent that we hear from the Ministers of Trade. And it is my privilege, rather, to now welcome on stage the Minister of Trade and Industry for South Africa, Dr. Robert Davis. Just a brief background on Mr. Davis before he takes to the floor. He has been the Minister of Trade and Industry of South Africa since May 2009. And Dr. Davis was a very active anti-apartheid activist, a member of the South African Communist Party, and post-apartheid, he has been the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry and the Chairman of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Finance. Before entering Parliament, Mr. Davis was Professor and Co-Director of the Centre for South African Studies at the University of the Western Cape. Now, it's actually very comforting to have him in the country because most of the time he's barely around. He's exploring various opportunities for trade and investment opportunities for companies in South Africa. But Minister Davis, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Let me greet our distinguished guest, the Honourable Mr. Suresh Prabhu, the Minister of Commerce and Industry of India, also a very good friend of mine in a number of forums that we engage in. Let me also greet my ministerial colleagues from South Africa, Ministers Gordon and Zulu, of course the Premier of the province, Premier Makura, the High Commissioner, the business leaders who've spoken from the platform, but also ministerial colleagues, in addition to the list you gave, ministerial colleagues from Botswana, Lesotho, Mozambique. I believe there's a minister from Eswatini and also from Zambia. Let me greet my colleagues from those countries. I've seen also we have a mayor present, so let me greet the mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay. Really, I think the first point to make is that this is a wonderfully large audience that has come to this, the very first India-South Africa Business Summit. I want to start off by thanking the High Commissioner and Minister Prabhu for making sure that we have with us a high caliber business delegation from India. Also that there was and I'll speak about it a little bit later, a CEO's forum meeting that took place yesterday, and we engaged with the CEOs yesterday afternoon, Minister Prabhu and myself, and that's been a very productive meeting. Of course, as previous speakers have indicated, this business summit is taking place against the background of commemorating our two icons, Nelson Mandela and Mahatma Gandhi, respectively. I think that last night, and in the indications that were being made here by previous speakers, which I'm not going to repeat, both of those have ended up as being global icons, champions of the values that we should be aspiring to, but also that there's a lot of historical intersections between the role that they played in their own country, and also in the case of Mahatma Gandhi, the fact that he was also a political activist here in South Africa. A point I made yesterday, which I think is well worth repeating in the context of a business summit like this, is that during our own struggle for liberation in South Africa, India was at the forefront of providing solidarity, and that included the fact that India was the first country to call for sanctions against apartheid and was a consistent implementer of sanctions against apartheid. And so what this meant was that as of the early 1990s, economic relations between South Africa and India were practically non-existent. There was practically no trade, and there was practically no investment relations. And I think it's important that we understand that, because in actual fact, over the years, since our democracy in South Africa, we've developed a strong partnership with India, represented in our common membership of a number of organizations, BRICS, IPSA, the Indian Ocean Rim, a number of groupings that we participate in together, in the WTO, I'm sure in the IMF as well, in the G20, in the non-aligned movement. We are all fellow participants in those international groupings. And of course, this is not the first time that we have been talking about developing bilateral economic relations. And I think it is important that we do recognize that we have over the years made some progress in our bilateral relations. India has come from nowhere in the 1990s to become between our 6th and our 8th largest trade partner, taking exports and imports together. So India is a significant trading partner for South Africa now. Indeed, our bilateral trade has been growing. So if we take the period from 2012 until 2017, this saw an increase in our bilateral trade from about 68 billion South African rands to 107 billion South African rands. It has been growing. We've also seen, I think, a growing and significant investment relationship between our two countries. We record that there are approximately 130 Indian firms that are operating in South Africa in one way and another. And a number of Indian brands are well known and well established in South Africa, including Tata, Mahindra, and Cipla, among others. So I think that we have something to build on. Just to put the other side of the story, I think it's also important that it's not just India investing in South Africa, it's also South African companies investing in India. Between 2003 and 2018, 28 South African foreign direct investment projects have been recorded in India with a total investment value of about 10 billion South African rand, and they've created over 5,000 jobs in India. So we do have a relationship that has been growing and does need and does provide us with a base. But I think that what we have concluded in our interactions to date, and what is the underlying motive for this business summit, is that we need to take that relationship a lot further forward. That we can do it, and that we need to do it. We can do it because, as has already been mentioned, India is one of the fast-growing economies in the world. It's a fast-growing economy also due to the policies associated with Prime Minister Modi, which have propelled India when many countries in the world were faltering and stuttering. India continued to be a fast-growing economy, and that's one part of it. And then on the other side of it is that South Africa, as has already been mentioned, is also on a new economic path. A new economic path which our President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, has called a new dawn. Now this new dawn is based on, underpinned by improving investor and consumer confidence. And this growing investor and consumer confidence is based on the fact that we have acted to deal with some of the challenges that have held us back in the past. So we have seen already a new broom sweeping the issues of governance and better performance of a number of our state-owned companies. We have seen action to reduce areas where we've had uncertainty in terms of policy and practice. And all of this, I think, is leading to a view that South Africa is on an upward trajectory, that the growth forecasts that we have at the moment are not the ceiling, but they are the floor that we can add to as we improve on all of these areas of economic performance. And indeed, it's worth saying that Goldman Sachs earlier this year has picked South Africa as the quote-unquote hot emerging market for this year of 2018. So I think that the circumstances in both our countries are propitious for us to deepen and strengthen our bilateral relations. And there's probably also another factor, and that is that later on this afternoon, I will have to leave this event because I need to engage in a teleconference to discover whether or not South Africa will be subject to punitive tariffs on steel and aluminium products to the biggest economy in the world. Now, that is coming against also last month. Minister Prabhu organized the first important political conversation to discuss where is the multilateral trading system going. And I think that this is indicating that there are shockwaves in the multilateral trading system, that our relations with our established trading partners are not necessarily what they were in the past, but also that the issue that Minister Gordon raised is a critical one. How do we work together to ensure that we have a more developmental, a more inclusive growth, and that trade is the servant of those two concepts, development and inclusive growth, and not something that trumps, to use a quote a phrase, that trumps those particularly important concepts. And I want to salute Minister Prabhu because he's risen to the challenge. We are very much, I think, on the same page on most of the issues that are confronting us in the World Trade Organization. We have very similar views on many issues, and Minister Prabhu has risen to the occasion by trying to take the lead in promoting that political conversation. But I think that also the more important point for the bilateral relationship is that we've actually got to find each other in the developing world, in the emerging markets, and strengthen the relations beyond that. Now, as I said earlier, I'm very pleased to say that we had a very good engagement yesterday with the CEOs Forum. And what we decided was that the CEOs Forum had begun to drill down to areas of sectoral cooperation that we could build on. And that led to a conclusion on our part that what we must do as government ministers is to ensure that we don't just let this slip until the next big event, but that we have identified a number of opportunities along the way where we can, as ministers, take stock of what's happening. We have urged our business people to follow through with regular engagements to make the areas that we've been talking about, that they've been talking about, and some other areas that we added, to make those things happen and become real business opportunities. Also, a little bit later, we will witness the signature of the agreement between Invest India and Invest South Africa, and that will enable, I think, those two agencies to also drill down to identify projects as well as sectors where we can cooperate and where we can move the relationship further forward. I would want to say as well that I'm very pleased that we have a number of colleagues from SACU, SADC with us here today, because South Africa has always taken the view that our destiny is inextricably linked with that of the rest of our partners in the continent and our immediate region. And I think that it's quite significant that right after Minister Prabhu's meeting of the WTO, we had the adoption by the heads of state of the African Union and the opening for signature of the agreements to put in place the African Continental Free Trade Area. That is an indication that this continent is on a journey towards establishing a large domestic market that will allow economic diversification, will allow and support broad-based industrialization across our continent. And I think that we will be very happy. I see later in the program that you'll be having meetings with our colleagues who are here from other countries, and we sincerely hope that this bilateral engagement between South Africa and India can also result in a strengthening of bilateral relations between India and the other countries that are here present. So I think that what we want to say as South Africa is, Minister Gordon alluded to it, one of our key objectives as the government, as enunciated by our President Ramaphosa, is that we are seeking a major investment drive, that the President has said that over the next 3 years we need to raise our investment, by $100 billion US, That is a stretch target, but it's something that can be achieved. If that is achieved, I think you will find South Africa in a much stronger place to be a partner with the region, with the continent, but also with countries like India. So I sincerely hope and trust that this will be a productive day for the business people who are here present, and that we certainly look forward to receiving a report of whatever transpires today. But I can also indicate that we are determined, both of us, Minister Prabhu and myself, to make sure that what was agreed in the business forum is actually implemented to the mutual benefit of all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister.
And just coming out of the plenary business session there, and some trade talks between South Africa and India relations. Just heard some word there from Trade and Industry Minister Rob Davies, as well as the multilateral talks around trade and more. For now, though, we take a short break on SABC Newsroom. Do stay tuned.
Special assignment. Crime keeps the society in terror and pain. Why so?
If someone phones me, tells me, okay, look, you need a server, and I get you all driving, I'll take it.
What pushes normal people to be so hard, heartless, and brutally kill one another?
The other side of it could be more for their own psychological need. It might be part of a sexual fantasy that they have. It could be about power and control.
After proper investigation is followed, the perpetrator gets arrested.
It's quite a massive process. And I think we do it to our parents. I think justice is served.
Emotional scars remain.
We would pay any price to get him back, and the sad reality is that it's gone.
Special assignment. We unravel the truth every Sunday at 21:30.
Welcome back. Well, some of the trucks torched by protesters on the N3 in KZN last night were still ablaze. The road between the Mooi River toll plaza, both south and northbound, remain closed to traffic. Emergency services are still on the scene, with the firefighters battling to extinguish blazes. Cleanup operations are underway, with various tow trucks taking away what remains of the over 20 trucks that were burnt. Meanwhile, police in KZN have arrested over 50 people in connection with the protest last night. Police say various units remain deployed in the area. A group of 54 people arrested will appear in a local court facing charges of public violence. Now for the latest, we are joined on the line by N3 Toll Concessions, Mr. Con Roo. Very good morning to Mr. Roo. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Essentially, can you give us an indication as to how long the N3 will be closed off?
Good morning. As you so correctly said in your introduction, there are very extensive rehabilitation and recovery works in progress right now. We're satisfied with the resourcing available. At present, we have 7 trucks, so approximately 7 trucks, which are still on the roadway. And as soon as those trucks have been removed, further repair work will take place because there's been quite extensive damage to the road itself.
Essentially, what, to your knowledge, led to the protest? And we understand that this is not the first time that trucks have been torched on this route.
The information which we have to hand, which is not an official view, but it is what we have been informed, is that there is a protest against the employment of foreign nationals as truck drivers in South Africa.
And to your knowledge, with regards to police presence in the Mooi River area?
Yes, indeed. The public order policing unit is on scene at Mooi River and maintaining a strong presence on the roadway.
And we do understand that you mentioned now just earlier that several trucks or 7 trucks are actually still on the road, and you'd have to wait for that to be cleared before the road is open, and then of course repairs. To such, which alternative routes can people use to their various destinations over this long weekend?
Our entire effort is geared towards reopening the N3 today, later today, because of course there's all the holiday makers will be returning tomorrow, and as we speak there are extensive backlogs of heavy motor vehicles waiting to go through. So our advice to motorists at present is, if at all possible, to delay journeys between Johannesburg and Durban, and to follow our Twitter handle, that's at N3 Route, or to phone our customer helpline 0800 634357 for updates. Should people have no option but to set out on their journeys immediately, we would recommend that the safest route might be to travel on the N2, travelling around by Pongola, Ermelo, and then ultimately by the N17 back to Johannesburg. At present, however, there are diversions, more localised diversions, open to traffic around the Mooi Plaza.
And also, can you just give us a bit more information as to the extent of the damage that was actually experienced, as well as those repairs? Will those repairs be able to be, done throughout the course of today to have the N3 open by the end of today?
Absolutely. We already have teams on scene attending to the repair works that they're able to access. And as I said earlier, our entire effort is geared towards ensuring that the roadway is open today.
Thank you very much for giving us the update there. That was N3 Toll Concessions, Mr. Con Roo, giving us the latest from the N3 Toll Plaza near Mooi River, where there are road closures, also mentioning that they are working hard to make sure that the N3 will be open both north and south bound by the end of close today. For the latest on the updates, as we stay on that story at Mooi River, we now cross to our reporter on the ground, Sibonga Konke Mbasa. Very good morning to you, Sibonga Konke. Of course, having a look at just those cars behind you, it just gives us a visual representation of how dire the situation is, as well as the extensive damage that this violent protest has caused.
Chantal, the damage that has happened since last night evening has been of great seriousness because, like you have just mentioned, right behind me, one of the trucks that were burnt actually carrying brand new cars, and two of them were burnt beyond recognition. Like you can see behind me, tow trucks are still busy trying to remove the burnt cars from the burnt truck. So you can imagine the amount of work that is still yet to be done just behind me. Earlier on, firefighters were also on scene because when we arrived this morning, there were still quite a number of trucks that were still up in flames. So they managed to get the flames down, and some of those trucks have already been towed. So like you have said earlier on that possibly later on in the day, these roads, both north and southbound, will be clear for traffic flow. But right now, the biggest struggle right now is the one behind me, where they have to tow cars from trucks before actually towing the burnt trucks. And right in front of the one that is being towed cars from, there is a truck that was also burnt beyond repair. But what saddens me is that inside it was carrying packs of meat, which were also burnt in boxes. As you can imagine, with the price hikes that were recently, the VAT increase, you can imagine the price of meat currently, and to have boxes being burnt to the ground along with the vehicle that is meant to transport them to a particular distribution house and have just been burnt down. So it's damage to the property as well as damage to the truck as well. And the MEC did also condemn the act of looting that happened here, because earlier on we did witness a few of community members, even now, just 30 minutes ago, some of them were still carrying some of the goods that they had looted earlier on and even last night from the now burnt trucks. So the police managed to also apprehend them just now. 30 minutes ago we witnessed that some of them were actually carrying it over their heads. In these goods we are speaking of various goods of mayonnaises, tissues, storable foods, canned foods, but then the police managed to catch them right on time. Just across the road from where we are, we witnessed that happening. But at this very moment, I think the biggest task is actually trying to get all of this burnt wreckage off the road so that there can be free flow of traffic. And of course, we will be getting the latest in terms of what is expected to happen to those who were apprehended last night and earlier this morning. We will recall that there's 54 of them. And the drivers were also kept to safety by the police at the police station because they had feared that when all of this happened, they feared for their lives as they were forcefully removed from the trucks. And of course, this is a labor dispute allegedly that they are contesting that most of these truck companies are opting to hire foreign nationals as opposed to South African drivers. And on the side of the road on my left, we did witness some of the drivers' belongings as well as logbook sheets, because whenever they deliver or take luggage from a particular point to point B, they have to lock down all the merchandise that they're carrying and have to lock down whenever they drop merchandise coming from a particular place. And of course, they travel long distances, being tired, and what a time where you have to be now stopped, forced out of the truck, told that you are not supposed to be employed by this company. So it's an overall labor dispute where we have seen that community members have taken an opportunity to loot and take the goods because this particular area is quite impoverished, minimal chances of employment, especially for young people. Even then, the MEC did condemn that act. He did say that they should try and keep away from such situations and not involve themselves from being a part of a criminal act, because he said that this is a criminal act. Shante?
Now, apart from the statement that was given by the MEC, has there been any word from authorities regarding the protest?
So far, regarding the protest, all that has been happening here on the ground, because even the MEC himself, he did visit and try to see the extent of the damage that has been caused. But he also did highlight that they will be engaging labor unions of truck drivers as well as legal authorities in terms of finding a possible solution, because it cannot happen that next time something of this similar nature will be happening on this road, because this is the second time where trucks are being burnt. And we will recall that 2 weeks ago, an incident of similar nature happened where 8 trucks were burnt beyond recognition and goods were looted prior to them being burnt. And this time around, we're sitting on 18 trucks that were burnt, some burnt beyond recognition, most of them looted. Most of them were looted without being burnt. So there were 14 of them that were looted and 18 of them that were looted and burnt to the ground. So 32 trucks were actually affected by what had happened here last evening.
And now, Sponga Konke, can you also just give us more information regarding the drivers? Earlier on in our earlier crossing, you mentioned that drivers were forcefully removed from the trucks, and then also some of them now are being held at the police station for their safety. In terms of any injuries from the driver's side, have you been able to get any word on that?
We were just about to go to the police station to try and see whether we can still get a hold of them, because some of the trucks have actually left. So assuming that some of them have actually left with the wreckage of their trucks by their companies, but we will be visiting the police station to try and see whether we can still find some of them there and find out how are they feeling. But the MEC did assure us that no one was injured. They were just forcefully removed, and no one from the looters themselves was actually injured. They were just apprehended by the police. So from this entire incident, no one was actually injured. It was just a matter of the cars and the trucks that were victims of being set alight.
Indeed, and this is not the first time, Sponga, that this has happened. It also seems to be a hotspot. Why have authorities not been able to clamp down on what has been taking place, as well as to control a situation like this of getting out of hand?
That was actually one of the questions that I had tried to pose to the MEC, that this is not the first time this is happening, and it's happening 2 weeks later. So it seems to be a growing pattern if it's not captured in time. He did mention that they've also observed that this is quite a hotspot, because people who are trying to address their plight are choosing to block cars here and block trucks here and set them alight, because they know that whatever the point they're trying to get across will be heard. We will remember that this is the main road that is connecting not just our province but other provinces in the country, because this main road is used to transport goods to companies all over the country. Because last time when we were here, the driver that I managed to speak to was coming all the way from Cape Town going to Port Shepstone. So you can imagine the distance and the link and the distribution of goods. Economy has had a hard knock on what's happening. So they are in talks saying that they have to come up with a plan to make sure that this particular area is not prone to incidents of this nature in future.
Now, we just spoke to the N3's concession, Mr. Conroe, and he said that they are hoping by the end of today that the N3 will be open both north and southbound. You're actually on the scene. Clear-up is still taking place. Do you think that that is going to be possible, that we could see the N3 open for cars well into the end of today?
Yes, indeed. One can actually be certain that probably in the next 3 to 4 hours the road will be clear, because right now there's just over 10, or if not less than 10 trucks that still need to be towed away, and then the road will have to be cleared from the wreckage, the burnt wreckage, and then the road will be open for free flow of traffic. That I can assure right now, because there's less than 10 of the affected trucks that are still being towed away.
In terms of the extent of damage that the fire has actually done to the actual tar of the road, is the road, in your view, roadworthy and road safety for cars to then pass by?
The road, I can say that the road wasn't really affected that much. It's just that there is burnt material scattered all over. They would just have to quickly sweep through so that motorists will not fear of having their tire getting burst. They can just freely drive their cars past, because there's a lot of burnt ash scattered all over the road behind me, but far towards the toll gate itself. So that would have to happen, and it's a quick process, I can assume. Right after the trucks had been towed away, then the road can be swept off, and then a motorist can freely just drive past.
Thank you very much for giving us that update on the ground. Sibonga konke Mbasa for SABC News, giving us some of the updates there regarding that protest that took place, as well as the damage. Also speaking to N3 Concessions, Mr. Conru, saying that by the end of today, the N3 should be open. In some other news stories, thousands of commuters across the country remain frustrated with the never-ending bus drivers' strike. Talks between employers and unions have broken down again last week. Bus drivers have now been given an ultimatum to either accept the revised 8% offer by Wednesday or not. Well, the drivers are definitely feeling the pinch of the work stoppage deep in their pockets. This, as Mangoba Mkunu reports.
It's been 3 weeks since Jacob Mukone last reported for duty. Work on his house has come to a standstill. The 49-year-old father of 4 says he can't afford to pay his builders for renovations.
We
are struggling to pay our debts because when we get paid, debit orders literally withdraw almost everything. And with the little that remains, we can't feed our families because the money is not enough.
Mukone is among 16,000 bus drivers who downed tools, demanding a 12% increase. The no work, no pay policy is now hitting home.
It's hard for us as a family. It's no longer nice because the money that my husband was paid before was better. I'm not working, and it's really difficult for me and the children.
Mukone says whilst they feel for stranded commuters, they believe their cause is a just one.
The bus driver's family, the passenger's family, we are in equal suffering, we are in equal problems. So now we are saying enough is enough.
Mukone has called on government to increase its subsidy for buses. He and his colleagues are adamant they won't go behind the wheel until their demands are met. Mangoba Mkunu, SABC News, Muloto in Mpumalanga Province.
Well, for the latest on the bus strike from the bus operators' side, we are joined by spokesperson for the South African Road Passenger Bargaining Council, Mr. John Dammer. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. The latest essentially is that employers have given the unions until Wednesday to accept that 8% offer. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Good morning. No ultimatum was given to the union. Talks proved to be inconclusive on Thursday, and from the employer side we have suggested to the mediators that it would be prudent for both parties to meet as soon as possible after the long weekend to explore further ways in which this impasse can be broken.
Can you give us any confirmation as to the deadline being Wednesday to accept the offer?
As I indicated just now, no deadline and no ultimatum has been given. We have merely indicated that there is an urgency for both parties to meet at the earliest convenience after the long weekend to explore further possible ways of resolving the strike. But, we have not given anybody an ultimatum. I think that would not be in the interest of good faith bargaining, since we appreciate the efforts of the CCMA and obviously would look forward to the goodwill of our social partners in labour to resolve this dispute.
Well, of course, SABC has disputed this, and we do know that negotiations between the unions and employers are deadlocked again last week. SABC spokesperson also mentioning some of the other issues apart from wages. On your end, what are some of the other issues and terms?
Well, there were essentially 4 issues that could, in addition to the across-the-board increase, not be resolved, and those issues are extending the night shift from 6 in the evening until 6 in the morning, whereas currently it is from 8 in the evening until 3 in the morning. Then there's also a demand on the side of labour for dual drivers that are not driving, but in the bus to be remunerated. There is also the issue of insourcing, where there is now a demand that all categories that are listed in the annexure of the bargaining council agreement be paid by the company. And the fourth issue was a increased allowance to drivers of bi-articulated vehicles. We have suggested that these four issues, because of the complexity and technicalities that are associated with it, be referred to a standing committee of the council under the facilitation of the CCMA to, within 30 days after the agreement is signed, to explore possibilities to resolve these.
Now, of course, you've mentioned that it seems that SABC is quite strong on their stance in wanting these issues to be resolved, as well as that percentage. You know, if the negotiations, start on Wednesday and still no resolution is then reached by the end of Wednesday, what is the way forward?
Well, firstly, I'd just like to correct you. SABC is not the only union that is involved in these negotiations. There are four other union groupings and 2 employer organizations that have been negotiating these conditions. We would like to call upon a more sober attitude on the part of our social partners in labor to recognize the operational difficulties that bus companies have to operate under. In your previous clip, the driver of one of the companies called upon an increase in the subsidy that is allocated to bus companies. Now, over the last 10 years, subsidy allocations to public transport on the road has only been increased by 5%. Over the same period, if one looks at the CPI, that also has only been increased by in the region of 5%. And if one juxtaposes the wage increases that employees that are covered by the South African Road Passenger Bargaining Council agreement have received salary increases in the region of 9%. So there's a significant difference between the sort of revenue sources that one as a bus owner can anticipate in the form of subsidies and the costs that are associated with running the operation. In this business, micromanagement of costs is a key indicator and a key performance area within the company. Because of the constrained revenue supplies, our kilometers are capped. We cannot utilize our assets to an optimal, on an optimal fashion because of the morning and the afternoon peak, and during the day they stand still. And also the spatial development patterns, which makes average trip lengths very long and characterized by low population densities. So, if wages, which constitutes about between 40 and 50% of the operational costs of a bus company, and if you add fuel to that, which is about in the region of 30%, these two, fuel the bus company has no control over. However, the whole area of wages, and we cannot be allowed to continue increasing at a level that is far in excess of both inflation rate and also the subsidy allocation from the national fiscus.
Definitely. Would you make a reference to SABC, as that is one of the unions that we did speak to this morning, as I brought it up in the conversation. But thank you very much for joining us this morning. John Damage from the South African Road Passenger Bargaining Council, the spokesperson there, giving us a bit of a prelude into the impasse that is currently taking place between employers as well as various bus unions upon the nationwide bus strike that has now entered its 13th day. That is a wrap up here on SABC Newsroom. Do stay tuned. We leave you with your weather forecast.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let's take a look at what's going on in terms of the weather for today. Let's first of all take a look at our rainfall around southern Africa. As you can see, there are some stormy systems developing around South Africa's eastern coastline, just off that eastern coastline. As we move through the day, we're going to see some showers and thunder showers developing through that central interior of South Africa, as well as the eastern interior, so isolated showers are forecast there. And other than that, we're going to see some rainfall along the coastlines of Mozambique into parts of the interior around the northern areas of Zimbabwe and Botswana as well. So let's take a look in a little bit more detail what this all means for your weather today. Cape Town peaking at a maximum of 24 degrees, depending on where you are around the Cape Peninsula. You're going to see temperatures ranging from 19 to 24 degrees, so a little bit of a mild to warm one there. But remember this, we're going to see completely sunny skies in Cape Town for today. It's going to feel even hotter than that. Which is going to be a good change after the last few days of cold fronts passing by. Now, temperatures in Maputo are peaking at 27 degrees Celsius. We are expecting showers and thunder showers here. Harare peaks at 24 with showers as well, and Windhoek 25 with a partly cloudy day with a fair amount of sunshine. Now we move further north, where we're going to see the rainfall developing primarily through that interior and through the eastern coastline as well. Take a look at Mombasa and Dar es Salaam for today. We're going to see those showers really intensifying, starting to move into those areas. Kampala, Kigali, expecting some rather strong storm systems developing through that area and moving from the east to the west. And then, of course, as we take a look at our weather for today, this is going to reflect that. Kigali seeing a 23-degree high with showers and thunder showers approaching the area. Thunder showers around Libreville, Kinshasa, Mombasa, Nairobi, Mogadishu. A lot of rainfall through this area for today. And as we see the change of season, we're going to see that becoming more and more common. Now, taking a look a little bit further north, what is going to become less common is the rainfall on that northern coastline. You can see today we're expecting a almost completely clear day through that entire area. A little bit of rainfall forecast along that northern coastline, but really it's not going to affect your day much at all unless you are directly in that very, very small area. Temperature-wise, it's still very hot in this part of Africa. 44 degrees in Agadez, 41 in Al Fajr, and 43 in Khartoum. Now, if you're going to be in this area over the next few months, you're going to see those temperatures climbing. We're moving through spring in the northern hemisphere, don't forget, and that's going to bring in some very, very hot conditions over the next few months. Now, today's rainfall in West Africa is concentrated on the southern coastlines there. Take a look at Lagos and Abidjan, both expecting showers and thunder showers. Conakry also getting involved in that rainfall there, and we're going to see those showers opening up into tomorrow as well. Now, this is where we'll leave your weather for now. Back to the news desk.
The fossil hominid sites at Sterkfontein Caves, known as Cradle of Humankind, were declared a World Heritage Site on the 2nd of December 1999. The Cradle of Humankind covers an area of over 47,000 hectares of privately owned land northwest of Johannesburg. Most of the site is on dolomite, a rock type which is slightly soluble in water. There are currently over 200 caves on the site and 13 fossil sites. We know that Australopithecus africanus were present in the cradle from about 2 to 4 million years ago. It is generally known that hominids are close relatives of human ancestors.
SABCnews.com is your one-stop digital portal to all the news you need. With a website that is easy to use on mobile, SABC News prides itself in being the primary source of public service content across multiple platforms. Watch live streams of all the big news events on the SABC News YouTube channel, which is one of the most viewed South African YouTube channels globally. And catch up on the best of SABC television and radio news. Follow breaking news on all of the SABC News social media platforms, interact with SABC News on Facebook, and stay connected on Twitter for the latest headlines and real-time updates by our reporters. SABC News, everywhere.
The firefighters continue to battle flames on several trucks torched by protesters at the Mooi River Plaza in KZN. 50 people have been arrested. Week 3 and still no end in sight to the nationwide bus strike. Members of the Seven Angels Church suspected of taking part in the Noble Police Massacre are to appear in court. And of course, Valen Kirtley standing by with your sporting highlights.
Thank you very much, Shante. Well, the reigning world champions, the Springbok Sevens, they lose bronze, their captain, and the World Series lead with 2 tournaments to play in the World Series after a costly Singapore stop. We'll have more on that in your sports bulletin.
Indeed, a very good morning to you. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm Shante Yankees. Thank you very much for joining us. Coming up in this last hour, we continue with those updates regarding the violent protests in KZN's Mooi River Plaza, where over 20 goods trucks were torched. On your sports, of course, is Valen Kirtley. A very good morning to officially Valen. A very happy Monday to you. Sporting-wise, what can we throw forward to?
Well, we can look forward to a lot. It was a busy sporting weekend. Thank you very much. Good morning to you. Happy Monday. And good to be with you here on Newsroom. We'll be bringing you a full look at what's been happening in your sporting world at 1:45 the top of the hour. First though, let's go back to Shante to get your top story when it comes to the news.
The lead story at 11 o'clock. Some of the trucks torched by protesters on the N3 in KZN last night were still ablaze. The road between the Mooi River Toll Plaza, both south and northbound, remain closed to traffic. Emergency services were on the scene this morning with firefighters battling to extinguish those blazes. Cleanup operations continue and are underway, with various tow trucks still taking away the remains of over 20 trucks that were burnt. Meanwhile, police in KZN have arrested over 50 people in connection with the protest that took place last night. Police say various units remain deployed in the area. A group of 54 people arrested will appear in a local court facing charges of public violence. Well, the KZN Transport Department has confirmed that last night's protest on the N3 is due to the truck drivers' grievances over the employment of foreign nationals. Earlier, we spoke to KZN MEC for Transport, Community Safety and Liaison.
We are concerned and we wish to condemn this act of barbaric, which we view it as a criminality act in its nature. We are aware and acknowledge that there are labor disputes. Part of those labor disputes are concerning the drivers who have been raising their complaints that there is a massification on the employment of African nationals from other countries. Hence, they are closing a space for them for job opportunities. So that's a matter which is a dispute matter in terms of labor issues. So we acknowledge that. But the action on its own is just a pure criminality which must be condemned with all the contempt which it deserves, and ensure that we arrest those who are involved. We are happy that the police have acted. About 54 people who are arrested already. I've just met with the drivers, those who were saved from this situation. They've raised their concern and they also shared with me their experience, what actually transpired here at night yesterday. But as provincial government, I'm about to meet with the law enforcement agencies to get the full report, and from there we'll develop a plan which will be sustainable. Remember that it happened 2 weeks ago, so we're supposed to avert this not to happen again. So we need to sit down with the police and develop clear plans which needs to assist us in terms of intervening in the situation. Remember, the area where we are is a poverty-stricken area, and the people must also know that. And by so doing, by so saying that, we are not saying people they must come and loot. There are interventions by provincial government to deal with the issues of economy in the area, resuscitation of industries, as you have been observing that most of the industries left the area. But with all this situation, it doesn't assist us as government, because the investors who may be having interest to come and invest in this area, they'll be hesitant to do so. So therefore, we are encouraging communities to distance themselves. Whatever happens here, it shouldn't become an issue of communities coming and loot in the trucks because of their socio-economic conditions. But it should be a criminality act which must then face the music afterwards. So therefore, we are clear as provincial government that those who are arrested, they must face the music, and they were found as stolen goods. So there will be no indemnity on the basis on the issues of socio-economic standards of the area. But we are calling upon the communities to bear with us and to be cautious. Those who are motorists, we are diverting vehicles so that we are able to clear the area. We are busy clearing the area, and we'll be able to notify them when the situation is okay for them to commute in this route. Otherwise, we are concerned about their safety, but we are also lucky that in all those trucks, about 17 of them who were burnt, no life have been lost. And there are minor injuries which we have observed from other drivers, and I'm sure they'll be going to clinic and sort that out. But we are saying to the community, let's work together. This is a situation which requires us as government and the communities to join our hands and efforts to avert this thing to happen again.
Well, thousands of commuters across the country remain frustrated with the never-ending bus drivers' strike. Well, talks between employers and unions broke down again last week. Bus drivers have been given an ultimatum to accept the revised 8% offer by Wednesday. The drivers are feeling the pinch of the work stoppage deep in their pockets. This as Mangoba Mchunu reports.
It's been 3 weeks since Jacob Mokone last reported for duty. Work on his house has come to a standstill. The 49-year-old father of 4 says he can't afford to pay his builders for renovations.
We are struggling to pay our debts because when we get paid, debit orders literally withdraw almost everything. And with the little that remains, we can't feed our families because the money is not enough.
Mukone is among 16,000 bus drivers who downed tools demanding a 12% increase. The no work, no pay policy is now hitting home.
It's hard for us as a family. It's no longer nice because the money that my husband was paid before was better. I'm not working and it's really difficult for me and the children.
Mukone says whilst they feel for stranded commuters, they believe their cause is a just one.
The bus driver's family, the passenger's family, we are in equal suffering, we are in equal problems. So now we are saying enough is enough.
Mukone has called on government to increase its subsidy for buses. He and his colleagues are adamant they won't go behind the wheel until their demands are met. Manqaba Mchunu, SABC News, Muloto in Mpumalanga Province.
Well, the Minister of Transport, Blaine Zamande, and MEC for Transport and Safety in the Eastern Cape, Weziwe Tikana, will lead various road safety activation programs in the Nelson Mandela Bay today. The activations form part of the long weekend period, which covers Freedom Day and tomorrow's Worker Day celebrations. Earlier, SABC's J. Lee Paulson spoke to the MEC for Transport and Safety in the Eastern Cape about the campaign.
We were confronted with a number of accidents during the past years, and the preliminary results, as you've said, we are placed in number 4. Of course, we don't like that. We are doing road safety education to this area. This area was affected. The high rate of those who died is through it's pedestrians who are walking through the streets. That's the reason, because this is one of the risky areas as identified by RTMC. We took a decision, therefore, that we must come to this area in all the identified area. The program started on the 24th of April. We'll be closing it today. We're doing road safety education, road blocks, search and seizures. Also, we're patrolling during the night. Hence, we've arrested more than 113 people. 85 of those were arrested through drunken driving, and others were those who were in possession of warrant of arrest. That's the reason why we'll focus on road safety education. Pedestrians are affected more. Those are the people who raised our number of deaths and the statistics in the area.
The Eastern Cape Arts and Culture Ministry has sent condolences to the families of the victims of the weekend crash that claimed the lives of actors Akumzi Jezile, Tobani Mseleni, as well as singer Siyasanga Kobese. Well, the trio and 2 other victims died on the N6 road between Queenstown and Jamestown on Saturday. Our reporter Atule Joka caught up with Jezile's family and found the report.
Family members say Akumzi was traveling on the road to Komani when a trailer carrying a vehicle got disjointed from the car it was pulling, veering off the road and ultimately hitting on an oncoming vehicle. Akumzi was on his way back to bury his late grandmother. His grieving family says he was responsible from a young age. He says his death really shocked them, especially since he had just finished building a house for his mother and buying a car for her. He says he really loved his siblings and was everything to the family.
Akumzi was like a brother, a friend to me. So it's something that was really said to me. Up until now, it's something that I won't accept it, not anytime soon.
The family says they will meet to discuss funeral arrangements. Police are investigating a case of culpable homicide.
Newsroom police are investigating a case of culpable homicide where 5 people were involved in an accident on N6 at around about 2 o'clock in the morning.
Actor Tobani Mseleni and former jazz celebration singer Siyasanga Kobese were amongst the 5 who lost their lives. I am Atule Joka, SABC News, Esenqumeni, outside Ngcobo.
Well, 12 suspects believed to be linked to the Ngcobo police massacre are also expected to appear in the Ngcobo Magistrates Court. These suspects are reported to be members of the Ngcobo Seven Angels Church in Nyanga village. The church is at the center of a deadly attack on a police station in February. The church was used as a hideout. Suspects said to have been involved in the Ngcobo police massacre were later killed in a shootout with police after hiding in the church.
SABCnews.com is your one-stop digital portal to all the news you need. With a website that is easy to use on mobile, SABC News prides itself in being the primary source of public service content across multiple platforms. Watch live streams of all the big news events on the SABC News YouTube channel, which is one of the most viewed South African YouTube channels globally. And catch up on the best of SABC television and radio news. Follow breaking news on all of the SABC News social media platforms, interact with SABC News on Facebook, and stay connected on Twitter for the latest headlines and real-time updates by our reporters. SABC News, everywhere.
When life takes a different turn.
If I didn't eat the speak, he was going to evict me.
Your will to persevere is ignited.
I'm not a professional speaker, but I'll try my best to give you a word of inspiration.
He was just trying to provide for his family.
If you can't accept it, change it. If you cannot change it, accept it.
And a new story begins.
Made a resolve to myself. I'm learning something new.
Upilong, every Friday at 5:30. Be part of the life-changing journey.
Welcome back. Well, our question that we're asking this morning on the backdrop of that story, more than 15 trucks being torched at Mooi River Toll Plaza in KZN. Send us some of your thoughts. Also seeing those visuals there of not only the trucks being damaged as well as the goods. Let's have a look at some of the comments that have been coming through as you share your thoughts on the incident that has taken place. We do believe it's not the first time that this incident has taken place. Well, we will give you those sports stories there as well as our tweets on that. The sports question that we're asking is, of course, we'll be getting to that. Let's go to our poll question. That's on bogus churches. We do know that Rwanda's Paul Kagame closed 6,000 bogus churches in Rwanda. Should South Africa follow suit? 91% of you are saying yes, and 9% of you are saying no. Yeah, there's those tweets that we were talking about earlier on. Herman Chikona is saying, of course, yes, please. It's very sad what we see in those churches. Something should instantly be done about them. Michael Bigham says a big yes, and it's long overdue. If government is dragging its feet in that regard, we the people will act on its behalf. Savannah says, yes, there is a lot of churches that need to be closed down. Of course, let's now have a look at the front pages of the continental newspapers. But first, though, let's cross to Evelyn Kirtley, who's going to take us through our sporting question.
Thank you very much, Shante. Well, the ABSA Premiership was actually wrapped up over this past weekend with just one more match still to play. Mamelodi Sundowns, they captured the title thanks to a brilliant effort throughout the season from them and their coach, Pitso Mosimane. Mosimane has now been hailed as the most successful South African coach by many. So that's what our question was today. Do you believe that Pitso is the greatest South African coach? At SABC Newsroom, we invited your comments, and here's what a couple of you had to say on Twitter. Not sure what your definition of a top coach, whether it's based on results or silverware, but he's one of the best at this point in time, alongside the likes of Metro coach Fadlu Davids, who is the coach of Maritzburg United.
This distinguished CEO would say the best way to enjoy a brandy is whilst wearing diamond-encrusted lamb's wool socks, accompanied by
the smell of fresh money.
Woo! Really? Sock diamonds? Well, we'd say a brandy enjoyed with last night's pizza works just as well. Tops at Spa. Good brandy, good advice, no blingy socks.
After a horrific accident, major questions were asked.
So step one, I asked myself, do I really want to die? And my answer to that was, I'm not sure. And then step two was, do I want my parents to bury me? And the answer to that was no.
Learning kept his brain in full action on how the brain works.
When I was in hospital, right, as I was saying, to catch up with my peers, I started to become obsessed with memory techniques and how the brain works and how we retain information.
Touching lives is his continuous mission.
I now work for a non-profit where we deal with access issues regarding kids with disabilities and persons with disability. We're busy working on beach access.
Being wheelchair-bound did not stop fun in his life.
I party in a wheelchair, I laugh in a wheelchair, I smile in a wheelchair.
For all your uplifting stories, catch Bupilong every Friday.
Welcome back to Newsroom. The SABC would just like to apologise for the technical glitch which halted our sports question for today. It was all about Pitso Mosimane after having extended the record to 8 ABSA Premiership titles for Mamelodi Sundowns. He did that with one more game still to play in the 2017-2018 ABSA Premiership season. So we asked at SABC Newsroom, is Pitso Mosimane the best South African coach? A couple of comments coming through, many people weighing in on the argument, and many people wanting their voice heard. That's our sports question. Is Pitso the best? Peter Maboya says he's not the quality of players he has gives him a lot of edge. The current best coach is Fadlu Davids of Maritzburg United. Luke Amal, then Pitso may follow. I base this on what they've managed to do with the little that they have. Fadlu probably be 10 times better than Pitso if he had the same quality. Certainly, Luke Amal and Fadlu Davids have done amazing things with Maritzburg United and Free State Stars, respectively. Yes, he's a top coach and the best coach ever in South Africa, says Honest John. Well, his record with Mamelodi Sundowns, which seems to be a perfect marriage, would say that 3 ABSA Premiership titles, 2 cups, as well as an African title in the CAF Champions League back in 2016. That was our sports question for today. Let's take a look at what's happening around the continent when it comes to the newspapers. Shante?
Definitely. Thank you very much. Valen will always start off here at home at what's making headlines this morning on our newspapers. For starting here, the Star reports that road clashes have already claimed several lives before the long weekend was over. This comes even before the Workers' Day celebrations on Tuesday, after which many people will start heading home. In Swaziland, the Observer says hot contender for the presidency of the Swaziland National Association of Teachers, Spacha Dlamini, got violent and stabbed her husband with a knife. And finally, in Namibia, the Namibian reporting that SWAPO's main business arm, Kalahari Holdings, this week rejected a recommendation to award a contract to build party offices at Mariental to company owned by the brother of Party Secretary General Sophia Shangwia. Let's take a short break here on SABC Newsroom. Do stay tuned for news and updates.
The Western Cape needs national government to fulfill its mandate on ensuring a bulk water supply.
We must ensure that the city of Cape Town never confronts this particular situation again.
The Eskom is serious about stamping out corruption, which is why the market is now beginning to accommodate us.
Looking at neighboring countries, expecting Botswana just to see partly cloudy skies with a high of 34 in Gaborone.
News today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
The Orange River is South Africa's major river. It rises in the Drakensberg in Lesotho, known as the Senqu River. It flows through Free State via Van der Kloof Dam, Eastern Cape into Gariep Dam, Northern Cape and Richterveld Transfrontier Park, which is part of Namibia. Orange River is 2,090 kilometers long. It finally flows into the Atlantic Ocean at Alexander Bay.
Britain's Interior Minister resigns following criticism of the UK's government's alleged ill treatment of Caribbean residents. Kenya bans a film about a love story between two women, saying it promotes lesbianism. A Gibson Kenton musical banned under apartheid back in local theatres. From African News now, Kenyan authorities have banned a film that tells the love story of two women on the grounds that it promotes lesbianism. However, activists say the ban will only promote interest in the movie. The filmmaker, whose feature production Rafiki is set to debut at Cannes Film Festival next month, has talked about the ban slapped on the film and why love stories actually matter in Africa. Well, Rafiki, which means friend in Swahili, is a love story of two women and is the first ever Kenyan film to premiere at the prestigious festival in France. The Kenya Film Classification Board announced the ban on Friday and tweeted that anyone found in possession of the film will be in breach of law. The ban represents a reversal by the board, whose head praised the film earlier this month on a radio show, saying it was about the realities of our time and the challenges that our kids are facing, especially with their sexuality. Well, the film is adapted from an award-winning short story, Jambula Tree, by Ugandan writer Monica Akta-Nyeko. In 2015, the board banned the film 50 Shades of Grey. Well, the KwaZulu provincial leadership in Gauteng will address the members of the media to update them on the provincial May Day celebrations to be held in Vanabel Park in Bopelong. For more, we go live to the briefing from KwaZulu House in Braamfontein, Johannesburg.
Also be addressed by the president of KwaZulu, which is the main rally, and its focus is in Nelson Mandela Bay. We also have a rally in Limpopo. We have a rally also in Northern Cape. We have a rally in KwaZulu-Natal. We have a rally in Northwest. We have a rally in Free State. We have a rally in Western Cape. And we have 4 rallies in KZN. And probably the reason it will be asked why 4 is precisely because of its geographical spread. And hence, therefore, it was felt that at least on that side we need to have some decentralized rallies, with the main rally in KZN, which will be in Durban, in the Keris Fountain. Here in Gauteng also we'll be having our own provincial what called rally, which will be hosted by the Sidibeng region, by Sidibeng Women VAR. But more specifically, it will be in Vanda Bay Park, in one of the very impoverished township called Bupilo, which will mean therefore we will be gathering in Bupilo Stadium. we are anticipating that at least based upon the nature of Gauteng, I mean, many of the people now and many of the workers are not necessarily in the province as we speak. They'll be traveling back tomorrow late in the afternoon. So in terms of the numbers, at least we're expecting not less than 15,000 members will be joining us. Would have been more than that had it not been this long weekend. But we appreciate and we understand the nature of our province, that members, it is an opportunity and time for them to be able to touch base with their homes. It is a time when they have to touch base with their families. So they've not necessarily been in the province, but at least those that will be in the province, we're quite confident that they will be coming. One other problem also is in relation to the question of the current bus strike, which also inhibits our capacity to transport as many people as we could. We have to therefore look at other alternative means of transport, which will be able to therefore ensure that at least we are able to reach that particular maximum that we have set ourselves, given the objective conditions that are confronting us at this moment. We are expecting that the gates will be open from 7 o'clock in the morning, where people from across the province will be coming. We are anticipating that at least by 10 o'clock, the program should be at least formally starting. And the program will therefore start with the opening, which will be and the welcome, that will be done by the provincial chairperson. Then thereafter, we will therefore be welcomed by the district mayor, Comrade Busi, in that particular area. Then thereafter, will also be addressed by the premier of the province, Comrade David Makura, as the premier of Gauteng. But I think it is also important to us to indicate the fact that our main focus for this particular rally is to try to give some content and some context of what we call the radical economic transformation. So we'll be expecting therefore that the premier will then be able to give the context in which how that particular radical economic transformation in Gauteng is unleashed and what are the difficulties and the challenges that are there in terms of briefing of members. As COSATU, we also work very closely with a number of other organizations, hence will therefore be addressed also by what we call PDS. PDS is an organization that focuses in the main in terms of giving solidarity to the struggle of the people of Palestine. So it will be also in an international context to reflect in terms of how the people of Palestine are being oppressed by the apartheid regime in Israel. Thereafter, we'll also be receiving a message of support from the South African National Civic Organization, which is SANCO. We are anticipating that at least at about 11 o'clock, all those two messages of support should have been at least been concluded, at which therefore at 11 o'clock, we'll be therefore taking a march to one company in Vanderbijl Park, which we think that particular company is a very key and a strategic company in the economy of the province and also in the economy of the country. Normally it used to be called ISCO. Now it is called ultimatum. So we'll be taking a march to that particular company to demand from government and in particular from the Department of Trade and Industry that ultimatum, based on its strategic nature in the economy of the country and also in the economy of the province, it must be and it should be nationalized. It should be nationalized as part of the radical economic transformation, because steel plays a very key and important aspect in the economy of our country. So when we talk about the question of nationalization of the key strategic sectors of the economy as agreed upon in Mangaung, we believe that that program must start with ultimatum, and hence will therefore be demanding from the Department of Trade and Industry. The minister in that particular department has also confirmed that he will be receiving that particular memorandum on behalf of the cabinet of South Africa, which we think therefore when we arrive at KwaZulu-Natal, we will also have some speakers who will be speaking in that particular event, at that activity, at that particular time. We are expecting to be addressed by the national chairperson of the South African Communist Party, which is Comrade Zogweni, who will then be articulating the message of support on behalf of the South African Communist Party. Thereafter, also, we will therefore be also affording an opportunity to the African National Congress to also be giving its messages of support. It has been confirmed that Comrade Ace Magashula, the Secretary General of the African National Congress, will be giving also a message of support and also being able to articulate exactly what it is that government it is expected from government in relation to drive the radical economic transformation in our country, in our lifetime. We will therefore, thereafter, having had received those two addresses, which is one from the South African Communist Party and also from the Secretary General of the ANC, will also therefore be addressed by the COSATU General Secretary, Comrade Peggy Njan, who will also be handing over the memorandum both to KwaZulu-Natal and also to the Department of Trade and Industry, to the Minister there, as part of our demand for renationalization of ISCO. We are anticipating that all those particular processes, at least by 2 o'clock, the program should be at least coming to an end as it relates to KwaZulu-Natal. We are anticipating that probably thereafter we'll then move back with workers and the community back to the Pillow Stadium, where we'll therefore be having a celebration around the May Day to celebrate the progress that has been done by workers, but also to look at the challenges that are still confronting us as workers. So that's how the program it will be unleashed, and we're expecting that probably you will also be joining us in that particular celebration. That's the end of the statement.
Thank you very much. We will be open for question clarities. Please do indicate your name and your publication.
From KwaZulu-Natal News. Just a quick 3 questions. First question: what is COSATU? Okay, I'm just going to divert a bit. COSATU's stance on the living wage issue, and are you going to tie in something along those lines with tomorrow, as it's May Day tomorrow? I just need clarity on that. And then second question would be that with everything that's happening with the bus strikes and the living wage issue as well, and workers being unhappy, as COSATU being the mother of the unions, what do you guys have to do to show your people that you are still there for them? Yeah, that's it for now.
Okay.
Question I want to ask about the initial minimum wage, but also how has the separation of COSATU, NUMSA and other unions that are parted with COSATU, how has that impacted on capacity?
I think let's try to start deal with this thing of the living wage. I think that our anticipation has been that at least by the 1st of May, the issue of the minimum wage will at least be made to be effective, starting from the 1st of May 2018. But there have been delays in the parliamentary processes, which then have impacted negatively in relation to when then the minimum wage will be implemented. Which, in our view, we view the minimum wage as a basic floor, and in particular that will going to benefit in the main more than 4 million workers in terms of the research that we've done. And in particular in terms of workers such as domestic workers, workers such as petrol attendant, workers such as what we call many of them in the restaurant sector, in the catering sector, were earning far less than what the current agreed minimum wage would have been. And not that some that were happy with the figure that has been articulated. But we believe that it is an achievement that was to be celebrated by many workers if it could be able to uplift more than 4 million workers who are going to benefit as a result of this. We then have also agreed that starting from the 1st of May, in particular those workers who are organized, it is the launch of what we call a mass welding action in relation to making sure that our affiliates begin to engage with what we call the living wage, which we believe that we do have capacity to deliver on behalf of those that are organized the issue of the living wage. Because there's a difference between the living wage and the minimum wage. The minimum wage is just a flaw of ensuring that even those who are not necessarily organized, who can't bargain and negotiate for themselves, at least there are some kind of measures and protection that must be given to them in order for them to be able to benefit. But our members and those that are organized, our task and our focus as we move forward now is to ensure that we are able then to focus on ensuring that we are able to demand and fight for the national living wage of our members. Within that, the leadership of COSATU as it addresses the national mandates across all the country, that particular question and that issue will be clarified in detail. We have dedicated most of our focus in terms of this mandate in particular to focus upon explanation in relation to why has COSATU accepted the national minimum wage and why it is important therefore for us to continue the struggle in particular as organized formation to fight for the living wage of our members. So we are going to be able to explain in detail in relation to that particular what we call question across all rallies tomorrow. The General Secretary of COSATU, as will be addressing the mandate in Gauteng, as the chief negotiator at net processes in relation to this issue, he will be giving an account to members in detail in terms of where does this demand come from, what has happened in the process, and why it is important therefore for us now as we move focus to focus in relation to what we call the living wage for the members. I think that will be explained more in detail tomorrow. Indeed, we are in support of our members and the workers in general who have engaged in the past strike. And we are giving them solidarity on a daily basis in terms of their picket line. We are able to, in terms of our locals who are going there to join them, to make sure that they give support. We have demanded also that the Minister of Labour and the Minister of Transport must intervene in the strike. And we have seen that particular intervention which has started. Because the working conditions in that particular sector are quite very horrific. In actual fact, there's very few people who can be able to survive working in that particular environment in the manner in which how exploitative it is. One critical factor, for example, in that particular sector is the fact that if you've got long drivers who are traveling long distances, for example, people who have to move from here to Cape Town, that alternative driver, he's not paid when he's not driving. Which simply means if you leave from Joburg to Cape Town, and if one driver from he or she drives from Joburg to Bloemfontein, which then the Bloemfontein become what we call the station where they then have to exchange the driving. That driver that has been staying, who has not been driving from here to Bloemfontein, all those hours that he spent in that particular bus, those hours are not regarded as working hours, and therefore he's not remunerated and paid for that particular process. So, and we feel that that is quite very exploitative, and the employers are therefore getting what you call the labor free of charge. So equally so, if the other driver therefore takes over from Bloemfontein, the one that has been driving, he then rests in the bus. And during that particular period, also that other driver is not getting paid for it. And we believe that is highly exploitative. And hence we believe that the demands that are being placed by members are quite very reasonable. The demands that are placed by our members must be met by employers. We are busy in discussion currently with our structures to see what other forms of solidarity that we can be able to give in relation to these workers who are on strike. One other example that we want to make is the fact that we believe that it is very important for government to intervene. Because PADCO, for example, and all these other what you call buses, they receive huge support in form of subsidy from government. And it is important, therefore, that government must not just fold its arms. It is part and parcel of this particular process, and it must intervene. We are calling upon the employers to really relook at their stance in relation to these issues. So we'll be also communicating with ourselves in due course on the form of support that will be given to these particular workers in this particular sector who are so highly exploited by employers who are making billions and billions of rands as part of the profits. The other question that was being asked is the capacity. I think COSATU still does have a capacity to pull any kind of action that it intends to do. We don't think that there is any organization that can be able, for example, at a go, to pull 14 rallies on one day across all the towns in South Africa, across all provinces. That can be in only one federation, and that's only COSATU. That still demonstrates the ability of COSATU to be able to do what it normally does in terms of mobilization of the people. Yes, indeed, it is unfortunate that NOMSA and FAO have to leave what we call COSATU, because we believe that the more workers are being divided, the more problems it will be on their side. And we can't, as COSATU, therefore celebrate the division of workers. We can't celebrate the fact that NOMSA is no longer here. We can't celebrate the fact that FAO is not here. But that's not the end of the world. The struggle continues. And COSATU will still continue to fight what it is meant for. Fight for the interests of the workers. COSATU will still continue to fight for the interests of the poor. COSATU will still continue to fight for the interests of the community.
Just to add on that, I think also Comrades, you would have noted that since the departure of NOMSA and FAO, COSATU has been able to hold campaigns, and successfully so. And the recent one being the 27th of September, I think we would have noted the capacity COSATU has. As much as it is not in any of the workers' interest that workers should be organized differently, because in that, then therefore, we lose focus on who should be attacked, who should be our enemy in a class perspective. Thanks.
In terms of the companies that you're calling for national, is ArcelorMittal, are there any others?
We are also calling for renationalization of Sasol. We believe that those two, for now, should be our focus. And as Gauteng, we move from now up until the end of the year, those are going to be our two main programs that will be having quite several, what we call mass action against those two companies. And in particular, we are calling upon government that it can't talk about radical economic transformation as if it is just a mere slogan. The radical economic transformation must be informed by the content, and we believe that as the organized formation, and particularly as COSATU, that Sasol and ArcelorMittal, those are the two main strategic what you call companies that must be nationalized so that they can be able to play a key strategic role in our economy. And we believe that we're looking at other sectors that we believe that need to also to be nationalized. The mining sector, for example, is one area that we think that government must play a very key critical role. And we will be convening an alliance summit quite very soon. And key issue that we will be looking at is in terms of why there is a failure on the implementation of the decision that was reached firstly in Polokwane and reaffirmed by Mangaung Conference around the establishment of the pharmaceutical company for the state, for example, which must play a very critical role. We will also be asking the aides to be able to tell us that why it is difficult, for example, for the government to have established what we call the mining company, which is supposed to be opening and operating in the mines. So we will be engaged quite very radically in relation to making sure that this issue of the radical economic transformation does not just become a slogan for some, it does not become just a mere myth for some, it does not become just a mere token. It does not just become a radical economic transformation without any content, but we want to give it the content, and this is what we are trying to do in that particular regard. But over and above that, we believe that if really we think that we must be able to deal with the question of the unemployment, we think that if in reality and we want to deal with the question of poverty, we believe that if we want really to deal with the question of inequalities, government must take a key critical role in ensuring that it plays a critical role in the economy. And we believe that it is important, therefore, that we must also be able to set up a capacity within the state to be able to do so. Because if you don't do that, we might find ourselves also with other quotas who may look at this particular things as an opportunity for some people to be able to loot. As we know that some think that the radical economic transformation for them, it means the radical looting. So it is hence important that the state must be able to build capacity to make sure that it is effective and efficient in running those state-owned entities. We don't want to see the continuation of the experience that we have seen in companies such as ESCOM. We don't want to see similar experiences as we have seen with the SAA. And that becomes important, therefore, that the state must be able to build administrative capacity and managerial capacity to be able to manage and ensure that these particular parastatals are driven and are being managed to the benefit of the society. And we think that has been the case at a particular point. And if government can be able to put its own focus and make sure that it deployed people who are capable, people who've got capacity, people who can be able to manage. This thing of just deploying people for the sake of deploying, we don't think that it is helping anyone in that regard. Okay. That's all? No any further question? Thanks very much.
Once more, thank you for attending our press conference, and please pass our message of our program. Thank you very much. And please join us tomorrow.
And of course, just wrapping the COSATU press briefing ahead of the International May Day celebrations. Of course, tomorrow is Workers' Day, taking us through some of the celebrations as well as some of the issues that will be addressed tomorrow in those celebrations. Thank you very much for joining myself, Shante Yankis, as well as Valen Kirtley with your sports on SABC Newsroom. We do it Monday to Friday between 9 and 12 p.m. Until tomorrow, bye-bye.